Chapter 1029. Heavens! Zhang Qianmao was a Fortune Realm cultivator, but she was killed just like that. Powerful, truly too powerful, to be able to crush a Creation Realm expert to death. So easily, just what cultivation base is that young cultivator at? Could it be that he's not a young cultivator, but an expert at the level of an old monster? Maybe he's just practicing a face-fixing technique, which is why he looks so young. No, he's really young. Check his chi. He should be in his 20s. He's so young. He must be a chosen genius, right? But there's no such person in the South Continent. He must have come from another continent. This is interesting. A chosen genius like him killed a member of the Upper Heaven Gate. What do you think the Upper Heaven Gate will do? So, what if he's a chosen genius? Even if a chosen genius offends the Upper Heaven Gate, he'll still die. Just wait and see. The Upper Heaven Gate's chosen genius will be here soon. That kid is dead. Many people were talking about it. Lin Feng gave the ox a healing pill. After the ox swallowed it, it recovered a lot. Lin Feng looked at the village and frowned. Now that he had killed a member of the Upper Heaven Gate, he had nothing to fear. If the Upper Heaven Gate wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be easy. However, the villagers might be implicated. I need to send them to a safe place. I wonder if Uncle Dashin and the others are willing to leave the place where their ancestors lived. Lin Feng thought. Of course, now wasn't the right time to send Uncle Dashin and the others away. Lin Feng wanted to wait until the immortal treasure appeared. He wanted to try his luck and see if he could obtain the immortal treasure that countless powerful groups would go crazy for. Vajra Demon, subduing ring. Lin Feng looked at the Vajra Demon, subduing ring in his hand. The name was quite domineering. He gave it to the ox and said, "This treasure is not bad. Refine it and use it to protect yourself." "Thank you, master." The ox hurriedly refined the Vajra Demon, subduing ring. Lin Feng, on the other hand, set up a large array that enveloped an area of 15 kilometers. As for the cultivators who were watching the show, they all retreated 15 kilometers away. Inside the grand array, thick fog curled up, obscuring all sight. This is a great array. That young cultivator is so powerful. Not only is his cultivation base high, but he can also set up such a profound, great array. Could it be that he wants to use the formation to block the experts of the Upper Heaven Gate? There are many experts in the Upper Heaven Gate, and there are also experts in formations. If they send an expert in formations, they will be able to break his formation. When that time comes, he will die. It is better to run away now. Who knows, he might even be able to escape. I'm guessing that he's not leaving because he wants to get the celestial treasure. After all, he's very strong. Maybe he really has a chance to get the celestial treasure. Let's just wait and see. The cultivators outside waited while Lin Feng walked towards the village. The old patriarch and the others also came out of the cave they were hiding in. Lin Feng and the old patriarch entered a stone house and told him about the relocation of the village. Although the old patriarch didn't want to leave the place where his ancestors lived, he also knew that many immortals had died here. If they didn't leave, there might be a disaster. Therefore, the old patriarch agreed. The old patriarch would then discuss this matter with the villagers. Seeing that the old patriarch agreed, Lin Feng let out a long breath. It was good to leave this place. For the villagers, living here was indeed too difficult. Moreover, they were also facing the threat of fierce beasts. Lin Feng had a way to make them live a rich and prosperous life after they left. Rumble! The void trembled. In the distance, ancient chariots flew towards the mountain village. They're here. It's the people from the Upper Heaven Gate. Many of the surrounding cultivators exclaimed. The experts of the Upper Heaven Gate had finally arrived 4 days after Zhang Qianma was killed. There were more than 20 ancient chariots, and there were at least 4 or 5 experts standing on each chariot. With so many experts, even an ancient aristocratic family would be able to easily annihilate them. But now, these experts from the Upper Heaven Gate were only here for a mountain village. There were many cultivators scattered in the surrounding forest. Everyone was waiting to watch the show. More than 20 ancient chariots stopped outside the Great Formation. Inside the Great Formation, there was a white fog lingering, and the situation inside couldn't be seen clearly. A cultivator from the Upper Heaven Gate sneered, "It's just a mere formation. Driving the chariots can forcefully destroy the Great Formation here. Then we'll forcefully break it," another expert from the Upper Heaven Gate said. Clearly, they were very confident in the ancient chariots. Whether or not we'll forcefully break the formation, we'll have to ask the Lord, another expert said. The experts from the Upper Heaven Gate quickly reached an agreement. They came in front of an ancient chariot and bowed to an old man. "Lord Sidhu, we plan to use the ancient chariot to forcefully break the formation. Please make a decision, Lord Sidhu." An expert cupped his fists and said, the old man called Lord Sidhu was called Sidhu Hongtao. He asked, "Are you confident in breaking this formation?" "Don't worry, Lord. We'll definitely break this formation. Then we'll capture that brat and hand him over to you." Sidhu Hongtao said, "Since you're confident, fine. I'll give you 20 ancient chariots. Charge together and break the formation." 10 is enough, an expert from the Upper Heaven Gate said. "Then I'll wait for your good news." Sidhu Hongtao said, "Lord, you only need to wait for half an hour." The experts left and gathered the 10 ancient chariots. The ancient chariots were activated. Each of the ancient chariots emitted a terrifying murderous aura. This murderous aura formed a murderous aura that protected the ancient chariots. "Charge!" An expert shouted in a deep voice. A loud rumbling sound was heard. The 10 ancient chariots crushed the void as they charged towards the Great Formation. When they came in contact with the Great Formation, it released a powerful attack towards the ancient chariots. However, the Great Formation's attack was blocked by the ancient chariot's murderous aura. What a powerful ancient chariot! That young cultivator's Great Formation can't break through their defenses. It seems like that young cultivator is in danger. I heard that these ancient chariots were passed down from the immemorial era. They're called iron blood chariots. They contain a murderous aura that can create the strongest defensive barrier. Once it's released, it can also form a terrifying attack. Now that these people have surrounded that young cultivator, I'm afraid that he won't be able to resist. A few cultivators whispered about the origin of these ancient chariots. "Brat, today we'll take your dog life." The experts in the ancient chariots laughed evilly. They were very confident that they could kill Lin Feng. In their eyes, Lin Feng was no different from a dead man. These experts drove the ancient chariots into the Great Formation. Author's note: sorry, Old Steamed Bun is heartbroken today. I'm in a bad mood. I'll try my best to adjust today. Tomorrow, I'll be back to 7. I'll also ask for next month's votes, rewards, and recommendation tickets. Chapter 10:30. Inside the formation, white fog lingered. From time to time, powerful rays of light would sweep over and attack the Iron Blood war chariots. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of thunder and lightning, sparks flew in all directions within the white fog. The Iron Blood war chariots had blocked all the attacks of the formation. The experts of the Upper Heaven Gate became more and more confident. One of them sneered and said, "This formation is only SOSO. Everyone, let's go directly into the depths and find that boy." Okay, the others nodded in agreement. Loud rumbling sounds could be heard. Immediately after, 10 ancient war chariots rushed into the depths. From time to time, powerful rays of light would shoot out from the ancient war chariots and sweep the surroundings. The people of the upper heaven gate went deeper and deeper while destroying the formation. Many of the formation's eyes were destroyed. These people laughed even more complacently. However, they soon felt that something was wrong. The Iron Blood war chariots had been flying for a long time, but they still hadn't reached the depths of the mountain village. How could it take so long to traverse a mere 30 miles? Something's not right. We're trapped in an illusion. One of the experts of the upper heaven gate said with a serious expression. It was only now that they realized that something was wrong. The other experts of the upper heaven gate looked slightly gloomy. They cautiously sized up their surroundings. Originally, they were full of confidence, but now they were uneasy. Crack, crack. Suddenly, the ground cracked open, and a huge demonic hand stretched out of the ground. The demonic hand directly grabbed one of the Iron Blood war chariots above. You're courting death. The 5 upper heaven gate experts on the iron-blooded war chariot bellowed and urged the iron-blooded war chariot to attack the huge demonic hand. However, what made their hearts turn cold was that when the iron-blooded war chariot's tyrannical attack bombarded the demonic hand, none of the attacks caused any damage to the demonic hand. It was too strange. In the next moment, the demonic hand grabbed the Iron Blood war chariots and quickly retreated into the abyss. A mournful cry came from the abyss, and in the next moment, the abyss closed. Quick, everyone gather together. One of the experts of the upper heaven gate shouted with a serious expression. The other 9 Iron Blood war chariots were about to gather together, but at that moment, the ground cracked open again, and 9 demonic hands grabbed at them. All the Iron Blood war chariots were caught by the demonic hands. Was it all an illusion when we broke the formation? My lord, please don't casually enter the formation. One of the experts from the upper heaven gate said the last word. The 9 chariots were pulled into the abyss by the evil hand. Then the crack closed and the world became quiet again. The expressions of the upper heaven gate experts, who were confident in their victory and in control of everything, changed drastically when they heard the miserable cries coming from the array. There's no sound. Are they all dead? 10 ancient Iron Blood chariots. How long have they been in there? And they were all destroyed. Is the grand formation here that powerful? The upper heaven gate has suffered heavy losses this time. No one was more shocked than the surrounding cultivators. The ones who attacked were upper heaven gate experts, 10 ancient war chariots, and so many experts with unfathomable cultivation fell just like that. This was too shocking. Sidhu Hongtao said gloomily, "Go and invite the 3rd elder." Yes. Very quickly, the upper heaven gate experts left. The 3rd elder of the upper heaven gate's array peak. Yen Liming was a heaven-rank spirit array master and one of the 3 heaven-rank spirit array masters of the upper heaven gate. This time, he had followed the experts of the upper heaven gate to this place. However, this 3rd elder had already gone to the immortal Evil Mountain. 2 days later, Yen Liming and the other experts from the upper heaven gate arrived. Apart from Yen Liming, there was also a middle-aged man with unfathomable strength. The middle-aged man was skinny, and his long and narrow eyes were like those of a poisonous snake. One glance at him was enough to make people shudder. The middle-aged man was called Zhang Qian, and he was also a top expert from the upper heaven gate. Elder Yin, this great formation is extraordinary. The upper heaven gate has suffered heavy losses. 3rd elder, please take us into the formation. We'll personally kill that little brat." Situ Hongtao's voice was filled with murderous intent. The upper heaven gate couldn't be provoked. Only the upper heaven gate could kill people, but anyone who dared to kill a member of the upper heaven gate was courting death. "The person who made the formation is really good, but it's not difficult for me." "Who's coming with me?" asked Yen Liming. "Me, Elder Yen, Elder Zhang, and I will go in," said Situ Hongtao. "All right." Yen Liming nodded, and the three of them entered the Great Formation. Situ Hongtao and Zhang Qian and are both ancient overlords, while Yen Liming is a heaven-ranked spirit array master. At the same time, he's also a quasi-overlord. Now that the three of them have joined forces, I'm afraid that young cultivator will die a tragic death. Many cultivators in the surroundings whispered to each other. The three great experts of the upper heaven gate were really terrifying. They naturally didn't think that a young cultivator could resist their combined attacks. The three of them entered the Great Formation. Yen Liming was a Tian-tier formation master, and his methods were swift and fierce. He brought Situ Hongtao and Zhang Qian deep into the Great Formation. Not long after, they could faintly see the valley inside the Great Formation. "We're almost there." Yen Liming smiled coldly. "That little brat's death is coming. He dared to kill the people of the upper heaven gate. Not only will that little brat die, but everyone who has anything to do with him will also die. If we don't annihilate his whole family, how can the upper heaven gate calm down?" Situ Hongtao and Zhang Qian's faces were filled with murderous intent. At that moment, a rustling sound was heard. The three of them looked into the depths of the Great Formation and saw a young cultivator calmly walk out. "Are you all here to die?" When they heard the young cultivator, the three great experts of the upper heaven gate looked gloomy. "Little brat, you're the one who killed so many of the upper heaven gate's experts. You're courting death. Today, I'll crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Zhang Qian jumped out and threw a punch at Lin Feng. "You're just a cultivator of the first life and death layer, and you dare act so arrogantly in front of me? Who gave you the courage?" Lin Feng looked indifferent. He used the immemorial star plucking palm, and a huge hand condensed in the air and grabbed at Zhang Qian. The huge hand grabbed Zhang Qian in an instant. Then it exerted force. Pooh! Zhang Qian, a life and death layer cultivator, was crushed into meat paste. You. Yen Liming and Situ Hongtao, who were originally filled with murderous intent, were scared out of their wits. Yen Liming was just a pseudo-life and death layer cultivator, so he could barely fight against a life and death layer cultivator. Situ Hongtao and Zhang Qian were both at the first life and death layer, but now Zhang Qian had been crushed by Lin Feng as easily as an ant. Situ Hongtao and Yen Liming didn't dare to fight against Lin Feng anymore. They turned around and fled. Sky Splitter, a 1,000-foot-long blade, light tore through the sky. "No!" Situ Hongtao and Yen Liming cried out in fear. Pooh! In the next moment, their bodies were torn apart by the blade light. Chapter 1031. "Did you hear that?" Situ Hongtao and Yen Liming's screams came from inside. "Why is there no sound? The two of them couldn't have been killed, right?" The cultivators outside were in an uproar. After an hour, there was still no movement. The cultivators of the upper heaven gate hurriedly left. They were afraid that they would also be killed here. Two ancient giants and a heaven-rank array master, who is comparable to an ancient giant, were killed just like that. Many people murmured, still in disbelief. However, the result told them that it was indeed so. The people of the upper heaven gate will go crazy. That young cultivator is too powerful. The three great experts of the upper heaven gate have been killed. The remaining cultivators of the upper heaven gate are no threat to that young cultivator. If the experts of the Upper Heaven Gate want to come here, it will take at least 2 months. That's enough time for that young cultivator to leave, and the Upper Heaven Gate can't do anything to him. Yes, that young cultivator is obviously from the other continents. The world is so big. If he leaves the southern continent, he will be able to fly freely. Of course, he won't be afraid of the Upper Heaven Gate. Moreover, he is so strong. The Upper Heaven Gate won't be able to kill him just because they want to. Many cultivators were discussing this matter. The news of the 3 experts of the Upper Heaven Gate being killed quickly spread. The 4 top powers of the southern continent, 1 sect, and 3 prefectures sent experts. Tuoba Manor, Zhongzheng Manor, and Shangguan Manor had always been suppressed by the Upper Heaven Gate in the southern region. Naturally, they were dissatisfied with the Upper Heaven Gate. Seeing that the Upper Heaven Gate had suffered such a huge loss, the experts of the 3 great powers all had a gloating expression. The experts of the 3 prefectures went to the mountain village to take a look. They wanted to see who the cultivator who killed the 3 experts of the Upper Heaven Gate was. Of course, they didn't go to visit Lin Feng. At this time, visiting Lin Feng was equivalent to offending the Upper Heaven Gate. In front of the mountain village, countless cultivators came and looked at the mountain village. However, they could only see a white fog. They couldn't see anything else. Many people felt that it was a pity that they couldn't see Lin Feng. 10 days later, an immortal treasure flew out from the immortal Evil Mountain. Immortal lights surrounded it as it quickly flew through the void. The attention of countless forces was also attracted from the mountain village to the immortal treasure because everyone's purpose of coming here was to snatch the immortal treasure. For the sake of seizing immortal treasures, several great battles broke out. Blood flowed like rivers, and countless cultivators died tragically. Lin Feng stood on a mountain peak and looked into the distance. He frowned slightly because he saw something terrifying. After those cultivators died, all their flesh and soul essence turned into the purest form of energy, which was then silently absorbed by the immortal treasure. What's going on? Lin Feng frowned. If not for the fact that he possessed the heavenly demon snake eye and could see through many things that others could not, he would not have been able to discover this. Things were far more complicated than he had imagined. Lin Feng suddenly recalled some information regarding immortal treasures that he had obtained from the Big Green Ox. The Big Green Ox had once said that the immortal treasure had appeared many times, but no one had been able to obtain it. And every time an immortal treasure appeared, countless cultivators would die in the battle because of the fight for it. This made Lin Feng think of a possibility. The immortal treasure had a spirit, and it was leading this matter. Now that it appeared, it was not looking for the fated person, but to devour the flesh and soul essence of cultivators to strengthen itself. Thinking of this possibility, Lin Feng's heart suddenly jumped. This was too terrifying. Things were completed beyond his expectations. How many people was the immortal treasure trying to kill? Every few hundred years, it would come out to absorb the flesh and soul essence of cultivators after they died. The immortal treasure must be up to something. However, what the immortal treasure was up to was unknown. Lin Feng did not participate in the fight for the immortal treasure. Instead, he watched from afar. The immortal treasure was snatched away, and then countless cultivators surrounded and killed the cultivator who took the immortal treasure. Then, the immortal treasure changed owners. Just like this, the immortal treasure kept changing owners. It was very difficult for the person who obtained the immortal treasure to take it away under the siege of so many cultivators. Therefore, they often died miserably. More and more cultivators joined the battle. The battle lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. Countless cultivators died, and the immortal treasure seemed to have devoured enough flesh and soul essence. The void suddenly shook, and the few cultivators who obtained the immortal treasure and were breaking out of the siege were killed by the immortal treasure. Then, the immortal treasure turned into a stream of light and rushed to the immortal evil mountain in the land of death, completely disappearing without a trace. What a pity that the immortal treasure escaped. Many people sighed, feeling extremely vexed. The immortal treasure entered the land of death. Cultivators could not enter the land of death to look for the immortal treasure because it was too dangerous. Cultivators left one after another, and the originally lively forest became quiet. Lin Feng also planned to move the mountain village. He entered the depths of the forest and subdued the Golden Crow Beast Emperor. This Golden Crow Beast Emperor had once ordered the Beast Kings to search for his whereabouts, but Lin Feng did not kill it. He still needed the Golden Crow Beast Emperor to move the mountain village. At the same time, Lin Feng planned to let the Golden Crow Beast Emperor and the Big Green Ox protect the people in the mountain village. The old patriarch was organizing some of the things left behind by his ancestors. He found an ancient map scroll made of sheepskin. This map was written in an ancient language. The old patriarch asked Lin Feng to see what was written on it. Lin Feng was shocked when he saw it. It was a map of the land of death, the immortal evil mountain. Old man, your clan? You must have an extraordinary origin, right? Lin Feng suddenly thought of the sacred snake cauldron, a treasure passed down from generation to generation in the Wu clan. It was not a treasure that could be passed down by an ordinary clan. I vaguely heard from the elders that our clan has a long history, but unfortunately, the inheritance has been broken, the old patriarch said. Lin Feng and the old patriarch talked for a long time. He and the old patriarch were organizing the things left behind by their ancestors. Lin Feng found a book that was turning yellow. Some of the content written on it moved Lin Feng, lived in the Huai River, then moved to the Li River, accompanied by Emperor Shun. Emperor Shun was one of the 5 emperors. It was written that their clan used to live near the Huai River, but later moved to the Li River. They met Emperor Shun when he was young and formed a deep friendship with him. They helped Emperor Shun become a great emperor, and their clan reached its peak, becoming one of the strongest clans at that time. Now, with the passage of time, their clan had completely declined. Lin Feng could not help but sigh. No matter how strong a clan was, there would be a day when it would decline. It was just like the old patriarch's clan. Emperor Shun obtained the heavenly divine, wood, and built the revered sword tomb. Suddenly, a line of words attracted Lin Feng's attention. Lin Feng's expression suddenly changed. Chapter 1032. Lin Feng had heard the black-feathered Eagle King talk about the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. He knew that the Pinnacle Sword Tomb was ancient and mysterious. It could contain all kinds of treasured swords. If a sword was placed inside the Pinnacle Sword Tomb, its power would increase to an unimaginable level. Now, Lin Feng had actually found some information about the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Sect was bestowed by Emperor Shun. Later, it was left behind in the immortal Evil Mountain. Lin Feng read another piece of information which made him extremely shocked. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb had actually been lost in the immortal Evil Mountain. Suddenly, Lin Feng thought of the immortal treasure he had seen before. Could it be that the Pinnacle Sword Tomb was the Pinnacle Sword Tomb? Thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. There is a sheepskin scroll that has been passed down for generations. It has recorded the location of the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Lin Feng was surprised. The sheepskin scroll recorded in the ancient book should be the Pinnacle Sword Tomb because it indeed pointed to the immortal Evil Mountain. I don't know if the black-feathered Eagle King stayed in the Outer Realm or if he also came to the Tianwu continent. He's not here, so I can't ask him more about the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb was very mysterious. He knew too little about it, but Lin Feng planned to go to the immortal Evil Mountain. If he could obtain the Pinnacle Sword Tomb, it would be a great opportunity. Of course, Lin Feng suspected that the Pinnacle Sword Tomb was the mysterious immortal treasure. He also wanted to confirm whether or not it was the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. If it really was the mysterious immortal treasure, Lin Feng didn't plan to subdue it because it was too strange. On the second day, Lin Feng told the patriarch that he would be away for a few days and would return very soon. The patriarch repeatedly told Lin Feng to be careful. Lin Feng immediately left for the immortal Evil Mountain. The immortal Evil Mountain was a famous place of death. It was naturally a very terrifying place. Lin Feng entered the immortal Evil Mountain carefully. If he dared to be careless in the immortal Evil Mountain, he could very well die. Lin Feng went deeper into the immortal Evil Mountain. He was looking for the location of the Pinnacle Sword Tomb on the map. However, because of the passage of time, the immortal Evil Mountain had changed. Lin Feng was unable to find the location of the Pinnacle Mountain. Location? Lin Feng looked. He frowned slightly. Landscape changes can change many things. Could it be that the cave recorded in the parchment has been completely buried in an unknown place of the immortal and evil mountain? If that's the case, it'll be difficult to find them. Suddenly, a cold and gloomy Qi emerged from the distance. Lin Feng turned his head and saw a cave a few dozen meters away. Inside the cave, a black fog was rolling in waves. Feng Lin Heavens. Lin Spirit was. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. But nothing was absolute. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Surrounded by the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. It was a pair of blood-red eyes. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Even though the Pinnacle Sword Tomb did not release its qi, Lin Feng Eagle Mountain sensed the qi of death. Even some of the deathly creatures lurking in the surrounding forests had completely concealed their auras. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain could smell the Pinnacle Sword Tomb. What should I do? It's going to catch up. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain saw Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Pinnacle Sword Tomb. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Pinnacle Sword Tomb. What a terrifying poison. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Pinnacle Sword Tomb. It was only 100 meters away from Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. It would not take long for it to catch up with Lin Feng Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng looked glum and glanced at the poisonous valley. Lin Feng gnashed his teeth and took out the antidote he had concocted in the swamp of death. He took it out and swallowed it. Then he activated the 2 heavenly flames to protect his body. Then he rushed into the poisonous valley. Qi, qi, qi. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Eagle Mountain began to burn. The Eagle Mountain was not able to completely block the Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Eagle Mountain. Traces of the Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Eagle Mountain seeped into the Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tomb's Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain. The antidote pill played an important role. Fortunately, Lin Feng Eagle Mountain managed to withstand the poison's damage. Eagle Mountain continued Eagle Mountain. The Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain fell into the Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain. After chasing for 100 meters, the Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain let out a pained roar. Clearly, the Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain had injured it. However, the Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain was too powerful. The Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain was unable to kill it. It quickly retreated. This Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain looks like a coiling dragon. It's very similar to the one recorded in the Eagle Mountain. Could the cave be here? Lin Feng Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain was startled. Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain reached the deepest part of the Pinnacle Sword Tombs Eagle Mountain. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain quickly entered. The Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain was very long. Lin Feng Eagle Mountain walked for a few hundred meters, but he was still unable to reach its depths. He frowned slightly. He had a feeling that the Eagle Mountain's Eagle Mountain was not as simple as it seemed. Tap! Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from behind him. Lin Feng's face suddenly changed. Could it be that something had also entered the cave? When he entered, Lin Feng increased his speed and walked towards the depths. Tap, tap, tap. Lin Feng did not manage to shake off the thing behind him. Instead, the distance between them grew even closer. A gust of cold wind blew from behind. Lin Feng felt the chilly wind blowing on his body like a knife, causing goosebumps to appear all over his body. He felt as if something was looking at him from the darkness. Lin Feng opened his sky demon snake eye, but he couldn't see anything. Something's not right. Something must be watching me, but I can't see it. Lin Feng's face was pale. The land of death was truly too terrifying. He ran towards the depths. Chapter 1033. Lin Feng turned his head to look behind him from time to time. He felt more and more uneasy. The heavenly demon snakes, I was known as the Eye of Origin, but it couldn't see that unknown existence. This made Lin Feng feel very uneasy. What was hiding in the dark? Suddenly, Lin Feng felt his body getting heavier and heavier. His legs felt like they were filled with lead. He felt that he couldn't move his legs. It wasn't just his legs. Even his body became stiff. What exactly happened? Lin Feng quickly took off his clothes. When he saw his body, his face was filled with shock. His body had started to petrify. His body seemed to be turning into stone. No wonder his body felt so heavy. Carefully sensing it, a very strange power seemed to have surged into his body. It was this strange power that was causing Lin Feng's body to petrify bit by bit. This was a terrifying phenomenon. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He quickly activated the heavenly fire to burn the strange power that was surging into his body. Chi, 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 chi. That strange power began to burn. As the strange power in his body continued to decrease, Lin Feng felt that his body had recovered a lot. Da-da-da. In the distant darkness, the sound of footsteps could be heard again. It seemed to be getting closer and closer. Lin Feng sped up. His pupils suddenly shrank. Lin Feng saw a statue. It was the appearance of a middle-aged cultivator. He stood in the passage, unable to move. Could it be a petrified cultivator? Lin Feng was moved. To be able to come here, he must be a top expert. Now that he was petrified in the passage, it was as he had guessed. There was a strange existence hidden here. He just didn't know what that existence was. Lin Feng touched the statue. Crash! The statue broke into pieces. Being petrified means death. Lin Feng took a deep breath. His heart couldn't calm down for a long time. This was because he was facing the same situation. although the heavenly fire had burned a part of the strange power that petrified his body. However, it was clear that it was very difficult for the heavenly fire to completely dissolve that strange power. Very quickly, Lin Feng had the feeling that his body was becoming heavier and heavier. Every step he took was becoming more and more difficult. How terrifying! What kind of creature is hiding here? Lin Feng's expression was gloomy. He felt that there might be a chance of survival in the depths, so he gritted his teeth and continued forward. Not long after, Lin Feng saw a corpse lying on the ground. Perhaps due to the passage of time, the corpse had already turned into white bones. He actually wasn't petrified. Lin Feng was shocked. He looked at the blood-red robe on the corpse. It was supposed to be a white robe, but it was unknown whose blood it was stained with. White Bones, who was lying on the ground, was draped in a blood-red robe. Could it be that the crimson robe is the reason why he hasn't been petrified? Lin Feng muttered. He quickly rushed over, picked up the blood-red robe, and put it on. A miraculous scene appeared. Lin Feng felt his heavy body gradually recover. It really worked. What's the origin of this blood-red robe? Lin Feng was shocked. Suddenly, a gloomy and cold aura assaulted him. Lin Feng felt his body being imprisoned. He couldn't move at all. A look of horror appeared on his face. What was going on? Was the terrifying existence hidden in the cave about to make a move on him? The aura of death enveloped Lin Feng, making him feel as if his soul was about to shatter. It was truly despairing. There was nothing he could do. He could only watch as the terrifying existence arrived and devoured his life. It's here. Lin Feng's eyes were wide open. He had the feeling that something was touching his body, but he couldn't see anything with his naked eyes. When the invisible thing touched his body, Lin Feng felt as if he had fallen ill. His body was about to collapse on the ground. Sizzle! 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 Suddenly, the blood-stained robe seemed to have come to life. Runes appeared one after another. Then, the runes emitted a burning sound. Lin Feng felt that the mysterious thing that touched his body seemed to have retracted its hand. Lin Feng also felt his body recover some strength. He leaned against the wall and panted heavily. He didn't dare to hesitate. He took out the saraira and held it in his hand. He stood up and went to the skeleton. However, Lin Feng couldn't find any clues. He didn't know who the skeleton's owner was. After 15 minutes, Lin Feng stood up. He was wearing the blood-red robe and holding the saraira in his hand. He looked around cautiously and cautiously. He continued to walk into the depths of the cave. Finally, Lin Feng entered the belly of a mountain. There, Lin Feng saw a petrified cultivator sitting cross-legged with a black wooden box in his hand. Revered sword tomb? Lin Feng was shocked. He had thought that the revered sword tomb was the immortal treasure that had flown out of immortal evil mountain. Now, it seemed that he had guessed wrong. Who is that petrified cultivator? He's dragging the revered sword tomb. Is he an ancestor of the old patriarch? I don't understand. Why did he enter the forbidden land of death? Even if he had no choice but to enter the land of death for some reason, why did he bring a supreme treasure like the revered sword tomb with him? Lin Feng frowned. There were many suspicious points about what had happened in the past. However, after so many years, all the suspicious points had become secrets. It was likely that future generations would never know. Lin Feng carefully walked toward the revered sword tomb. However, he was still attacked. Puff! Lin Feng's chest was pierced by an invisible force. His body was sent flying. Ugh! Lin Feng slammed into the wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. What attacked me? Was it a creature hiding in the dark? Or is there a restriction here that even I can't detect? Lin Feng's face was pale. He struggled to get up. Puff! However, another attack pierced through his body. Lin Feng fell to the ground. He felt his life quickly slipping away. This cave could forcibly rob an injured cultivator of their lifespan. Lin Feng wanted to use his immortal divine body to heal his injuries, but he found that his bloodline had been sealed. This was a very scary thing. It seemed that he could only wait for death here. Puff, puff, puff. His body was pierced again and again. Blood dyed him red. As expected of the forbidden land of death, Lin Feng smiled bitterly. He felt a deep sense of powerlessness. The forbidden land of death was said to be able to bury gods. Lin Feng didn't believe it before, but now he did. The forbidden land of death was too strange. His body fell to the ground and twitched violently. His life was slipping away. Blood flowed out. Lin Feng's consciousness was dissipating. Some of the blood stained the stone statue holding the revered sword tomb. The blood was absorbed by the stone statue. Crack! Crack! The stone statue began to crack. Chapter 10:34. The statue cracked open, revealing a middle-aged cultivator. He sat cross-legged, with his eyes closed. Swish! The next moment, he opened his eyes, which flashed with a dazzling light. So many years have passed, and someone actually managed to enter this place. The middle-aged cultivator was shocked to see Lin Feng. Lin Feng was visibly moved. He hadn't expected the middle-aged cultivator to be resurrected. It was as if he had seen the hope of survival. Lin Feng hurriedly said, "I came from the Wu clan's mountain village. I obtained a sheepskin scroll from the old clan leader and entered this place." "I see." The middle-aged man nodded and asked, "You have a sword?" "Yes." Lin Feng hurriedly took out the Black Dragon Sword, Spring and Autumn Sword, and Void Death Sword. These were the 3 treasured swords he had obtained. You've collected quite a few good swords. It seems like fate really does play a part in all of this. The middle-aged man stood up and pointed at the revered sword mound with his right hand. Crack! The revered sword mound's box automatically opened, revealing a sword slot. Next, the 3 treasured swords buzzed, as if they had been summoned by the revered sword mound. They shot up into the sky and flew towards the revered sword mound. "Divine swords, return!" The middle-aged cultivator shouted in a low voice. The 3 swords quickly shrank and flew into the sword groove of the most high sword mound. Then, the middle-aged cultivator waved his right hand in the air. Swish! A dazzling light surged out as the 3 treasured swords flew out and slashed forward. Clang! The 3 treasured swords seemed to collide with something terrifying, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard in the darkness. The 3 treasured swords spun in the air, slashing out sharp attacks as they clashed with the unknown existence again and again. "Senior, what is that?" Lin Feng asked with a serious expression. The middle-aged cultivator also had a serious look on his face. He said, "It's a type of living being that cannot be described." The middle-aged cultivator seemed to be afraid of something and didn't tell Lin Feng what it was. Lin Feng nodded and did not continue to ask. He looked at the 3 swords. Regardless of whether it was the Black Dragon Sword, the Sword of Peace, or the Sword of Spring and Autumn, they were all supreme divine swords. But now, the attack of the 3 divine swords was blocked by the unknown existence. It was hard to imagine how powerful the unknown existence was. Supreme sword control art. Sword will like a dragon. The middle-aged cultivator's hands continuously formed hand seals. Suddenly, the 3 treasured swords combined together in the void. The shadow of a giant dragon vaguely appeared. This was the sword intent dragon formed by the combination of the 3 swords, accompanied by a dragon's roar. The power of the 3 swords combined and slashed toward the unknown, terrifying existence. Clang! accompanied by a muffled sound of collision, the terrifying creature seemed to have been pushed back. "Let's go." The middle-aged cultivator grabbed Lin Feng and shot out of the cave. The two of them rushed into the passageway, and 3 flying swords quickly flew over. "Grab the sword. The treasured sword will bring you out." The black dragon sword flew out, and Lin Feng grabbed its hilt. Then the black dragon sword turned into a black bolt of lightning and shot out. Pooh! In the next moment, half of the middle-aged cultivator's body was torn apart, but no blood flowed out. The torn half of his body turned into stone. Slash! The middle-aged cultivator shouted, and activated the Supreme Sword Control Art, activating the power of the Sword of Spring and Autumn and the Sword of Peace. The 2 treasured swords slashed at the pitch-black void behind them. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of collision, sparks flew everywhere. It was unknown what the 2 treasures had collided with, but such a sound had been produced. The middle-aged cultivator retreated as he fought. He had been heavily injured several times, and his body had been torn apart. Half of his body had turned into stone, and it was extremely tattered. But in the end, he finally rushed out of the cave. The unknown existence that had chased him out of the cave finally retreated. "Senior, your body," seeing the middle-aged cultivator's tattered body, Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. "Don't worry about me. We can't stay here for long. Let's leave quickly." The middle-aged cultivator looked gravely at Lin Feng and said, "Later, no matter what happens, don't look back. Just run as fast as you can. You hear me?" Hearing the middle-aged cultivator's words, Lin Feng's heart trembled. He had a premonition that something bad was going to happen. "I know." Lin Feng bit his lip and nodded solemnly. He was powerless to change anything. The only thing he could do was listen to the middle-aged cultivator. Swoosh! The middle-aged cultivator grabbed Lin Feng and rushed out of the poisonous valley. Black fog curled up around them. The terrifying being that had been guarding outside this entire time was the first to attack Lin Feng and the middle-aged cultivator. "Take the revered sword tomb and leave quickly." The middle-aged cultivator sent Lin Feng 1,000 meters away. He charged towards that terrifying creature. Lin Feng held the revered sword tomb in his arms and madly ran outside. The revered sword tomb belongs to the immortal evil mountain. Lowly being, you've already become a slave of the immortal evil mountain. How dare you let someone take away something from the immortal evil mountain? You're doomed to perish forever. In the depths of the immortal evil mountain, 9 streams of black fog surged out. There seemed to be a terrifying existence hidden in each of the black mists, heavenly mountains and rivers. The middle-aged cultivator roared and pushed back the terrifying being that was fighting with him. He then created a world of mountains and rivers to block the beings that were rushing out of the immortal evil mountain. However, there was still a stream of black fog that broke through the defensive line and chased after Lin Feng. Rumble, the restrictions in the immortal evil mountain were all activated. Thick chains of restrictions rushed towards Lin Feng. Each of them could easily kill an ancient powerhouse. Lin Feng opened his heavenly demon snake eye and at the same time used a secret technique from the Heavenly Master sect. The 2 abilities combined to predict and avoid all kinds of restrictions in advance. Again and again, he dodged the attacks of the restriction by a hair's breadth. The terrifying aura behind him made Lin Feng panic. He knew that there must be some terrifying being chasing after him, but Lin Feng didn't dare to look back. Suddenly, a demonic hand came out of the black fog and grabbed at Lin Feng. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt that his body couldn't move. Bang! The middle-aged cultivator's body directly exploded, and the terrifying beings that he blocked were sent flying. Then, a ball of origin energy flew out and hit the demonic aura that was chasing after Lin Feng. The being in the demonic aura was also sent flying. Lin Feng regained his ability to move and quickly rushed out of the immortal evil mountain. Lin Feng turned his head and looked at the immortal evil mountain. He saw the middle-aged man's body turning into a rain of light and gradually dissipating. "Senior." Lin Feng shed tears. His heart was filled with sorrow. "Don't be sad. My life has been gone for countless years, and my soul was imprisoned in the immortal evil mountain, enslaved forever. Today, to be able to send the revered sword tomb out of the immortal evil mountain, my body and soul were destroyed, and it was worth it." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged cultivator's body completely disappeared. In the sky, there was a rain of stars. One could faintly hear the sound of crying, as if the trees and flowers in the forest were sad for the middle-aged cultivator's death. Chapter 10:35. The golden crow beast emperor flew above the forest with a few hundred villagers in tow. Finally, they arrived at a place with beautiful scenery. There were only some ordinary beasts within a few hundred miles. There were no ferocious beasts and no cultivators along the way. It was the most suitable place to live. The old chief chose to set up camp in a valley. Then, everyone worked together to build stone houses. Lin Feng left enough spirit stones for the village and gave the old chief more than a dozen techniques and spells. He hoped that the villagers would be able to increase their cultivation in the future. Maybe they could recreate the glory of their ancestors in the future. Lin Feng also left many precious medicinal ingredients and concocted all sorts of pills. Someday, the village would be able to use those pills. With the green ox and the golden crow beast emperor protecting the village, Lin Feng didn't need to worry. As for the revered sword tomb, Lin Feng didn't give it to the old chief. This was because he needed the revered sword tomb. Moreover, if he gave this treasure to the old chief, he was afraid that it would be a disaster rather than a blessing. Because of the revered sword tomb, the entire village could be destroyed. Lin Feng planned to leave. He wanted to return to the wastelands where he had friends and loved ones. That night, Lin Feng took out the regal sword grave and inspected it with his godly awareness. He carefully inspected the treasure. The ancient sword box was engraved with runes. This treasure had been passed down for many years, and it still had a terrifying power. Lin Feng dripped his blood to refine the revered sword tomb. He felt that he had established a connection with it. A huge amount of information flowed into Lin Feng's mind as he refined the revered sword tomb. This was the cultivation method of the revered sword control art. The revered sword tomb would pass this secret art to its new owner. Lin Feng began to comprehend the revered sword control art. The next day, Lin Feng bid farewell to the villagers. "If you're tired outside, come back to the village. This will always be your home." The old chief said, "Brother Feng, I'll cultivate well and become someone like you," little Jia said, clenching his fists. "Brother Lin, take care. Come back and visit us in the future." But Face shouted, "Little Feng, you have to be careful when you're alone outside." Uncle Dashan reminded him with concern. Lin Feng was touched, but he knew that he had to leave. On this sunny afternoon, Lin Feng waved goodbye to everyone in the village and then flew into the distance. He planned to head to the Tao-seeking sect, which was Li Yuan Er's sect. The Tao-seeking sect had a teleportation formation. Perhaps he could use the teleportation formation of the Tao-seeking sect to reach the ancient city with a space-time wormhole. Then he could take the space-time wormhole and leave the South Continent. The Tao-seeking sect belonged to the level of an ancient faction. It was not particularly strong, but it was not too weak either. This kind of faction was relatively common in the Heaven Martial continent. When Lin Feng arrived at the foot of the Tao-seeking sex mountain, he discovered that there were many people coming and going, countless luxurious carriages under the protection of guards gathered from all directions. These carriages stopped at the foot of the Tao-seeking sex mountain. From time to time, young men and young women would come out of the carriages. Lin Feng guessed that they must be disciples from aristocratic families who had come to participate in the Tao querying sex test. When he arrived at the mountain gate, he was blocked by someone. If you're here to participate in the new disciple test, an elder will come tomorrow to make arrangements. The disciple guarding the mountain said. Lin Feng said, I'm here to borrow the Tao-seeking sex teleportation portal. Go and report this. Lin Feng casually tossed a bag of spirit stones to the disciple in charge. The disciple opened the bag and saw that there were more than 100 mid-grade spirit stones. He immediately smiled. Senior brother, please wait for a moment. I'll go and report this. The disciple in charge quickly left. Not long after, the disciple returned and cupped his fists at Lin Feng. Senior brother, please follow me to the teleportation portal valley. Lin Feng nodded and followed the disciple to the teleportation portal valley. There were dozens of cultivators gathered at the teleportation portal, most likely here to borrow the Tao-seeking sex teleportation portal. The elder in charge of this place was called Li Yi. He asked, Young friend, where do you plan to go? Lin Feng replied, I'll go wherever there's a space-time wormhole. There are a total of 3 cities with space-time wormholes in the South Continent. The first is called Sky Gate City, which is controlled by the Upper Heaven Gate. The second is called Southern Region City, which is controlled by the Tuoba clan and the Zhongjin clan. There's also a smaller city called Shangguan City, which is the territory of the Shangguan clan. There's also a space-time wormhole here, but there's a difference between different wormholes. Sky Gate City and Southern Region City's wormholes can teleport people across 100 prefectures, but the Shangguan clan's wormhole can only teleport people across 40 prefectures. Southern Region City. Lin Feng said, Southern Region City is the furthest city from here. That's why it's a little expensive to teleport there. Li Yi said with a shrewd smile. Lin Feng tossed him a bag of spirit stones and asked, Are these enough? Li Yi opened it and found that there were 3,000 best quality spirit stones inside. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He quickly nodded and said with a smile, That's enough. That's definitely enough. There was no lack of cultivators training in the ancient forest. In order to increase their strength, Li Yuan, and her 8 fellow disciples had entered the forest to train. Their strength had increased by leaps and bounds, but now they were in a life-or-death situation. They were being attacked by a group of skeletal lizards. These skeletal lizards lived deep underground, and they were 15 to 20 meters long. They had thick hind legs and large mouths. Their teeth were so sharp that they could easily pierce through treasures. From this, one could see how terrifying these skeletal lizards were. Of course, the most despairing thing about the skeletal lizards was that they were ferocious beasts that lived in packs. More than 100 skeletal lizards had surrounded Li Yuan, and the others, and they kept charging at them. Crack, crack. One defensive treasure after another was bitten to pieces. Everyone's faces were pale, and their faces were filled with fear. Woo, 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 Li Yuan, and the other 3 female disciples were sobbing. Facing death, their hearts were filled with fear. The other 5 male disciples were also pale, and their bodies were trembling. Crack, the last defensive treasure, was torn apart by the skeletal lizards. We're done for. Li Yuan, and the others shouted with trembling voices, their faces ashen. The skeletal lizards pounced on the 9 people, just as they were about to fall into despair. Suddenly, A jade pendant on Li Yuan-er's waist emitted a violent fluctuation. Whoosh! A dazzling light surged out, and with Li Yuan-er as the center, a saber light swept out in all directions. Pooh! Pooh! The sound of something being torn apart rang out. A thick smell of blood filled the forest. When the light dissipated, Li Yuan-er and the others looked around, dumbfounded. The ground was littered with skeletal lizard corpses. These powerful skeletal lizards didn't even have the strength to resist before they were all killed. Heavens! Heavens! What happened? One of the female disciples muttered in shock. A male disciple pointed at Li Yuan-er's jade pendant and said in a trembling voice, "Junior Sister Li, it's that jade pendant. The attack it released instantly killed over 100 skeletal lizards." Li Yuan-er looked at the jade pendant in a daze. Wasn't this the jade pendant that mysterious guy had tossed to her? At first, Li Yuan-er had thought that it was a token of love that Lin Feng had tossed to her, but after thinking about it carefully, she realized that the two of them might never meet again. How could he possibly give her a token of love? After thinking it through, Li Yuan-er believed that the jade pendant might really have been a gift from that guy to thank her for telling him where the teleportation formation was. Thus, Li Yuan-er felt at ease and carried the jade pendant with her. Li Yuan-er had originally thought that it was just an ordinary jade pendant, but now the jade talisman had actually released such a powerful attack. Li Yuan-er's heart was in turmoil. Who is he? He casually tossed a jade pendant to me, and it's already so terrifying. Li Yuan-er's heart was filled with shock. She couldn't help but suspect Lin Feng's identity. However, when she thought about how she and a genius like Lin Feng were from two different worlds, she couldn't help but sigh, feeling inexplicably disappointed. Chapter 1036. Southern Region City was located in the southern part of Nanzhou. It was an ancient and powerful city that housed the Tuoba family and the Zhongzheng family. These two families were two of the top forces in the South region. Southern Region City was bustling with noise and excitement. As soon as Lin Yun stepped out of the transmission array, he was greeted by a thunderous roar. People were coming and going in the transmission array. Lin Feng didn't plan on staying in Southern Region City for long. He planned on leaving through the space-time wormhole. He went to ask when the wormhole would open, and was told that it would open in 2 days. Space-time wormholes consumed a massive amount of energy, so they usually opened once every 3 days. The purpose of opening them was to gather enough cultivators at once. This way, the Tuoba family and the Zhongzheng family, who controlled the wormhole, would be able to earn more profits. Lin Feng had no choice but to leave the transmission array. He found an inn to stay in and waited for the wormhole to open before leaving. Lin Feng didn't go out. He stayed in his room. Time passed quickly. 2 days later, Lin Feng arrived at the transmission array once again. However, Lin Feng's expression sank when he arrived. This was because there was a huge mirror floating in the air. The mirror shone on the cultivators entering and leaving the transmission array. The God-transforming mirror. No one can hide from it. The mirror was terrifying. If Lin Feng was shown on by it, he would definitely be exposed. Did the Upper Heaven Gates experts come here? Lin Feng looked from afar. He felt that things were a little troublesome. If he was discovered, the Upper Heaven Gates experts would definitely come to attack him. In the distance, 9 Pegasus horses pulled a bronze carriage over. A thin old man with gloomy eyes stepped out of the carriage. Several elders in the transmission array bowed to the old man. Who is that? Some cultivators were puzzled. Someone who could make the elders of the transmission array come out to greet them must have an extraordinary identity. Upper Heaven Gates Great Elder, Yu Wenqing. Someone said, "It's him. I heard that he's an 8th level life and death powerhouse. Some cultivators cried out in alarm. An existence of this level stood at the peak of the ancient giants. Even the God-transforming mirror has been brought here. Could the upper heaven gate be looking for someone? One of the cultivators asked doubtfully. I heard that the upper heaven gate suffered heavy losses at the immortal evil mountain in the land of death. Many experts died at the hands of a young expert. The upper heaven gate was furious and sent out 4 experts to kill that cultivator. A cultivator said, "These are the top 4 experts from the upper heaven gate's law enforcement hall. Looks like the upper heaven gate is getting serious. I wonder who they are after." Lin Feng heard a lot of news. He inquired about the identities of the 4 great experts of Clear Sky and White Sunday. These 4 people were Yuan Qing, Na Lan Tian, Gong Sunbai, and Dongfang Ri. The strength of these 4 experts could be described with the word good fortune. The weakest among them was Yuan Qing, the cultivator from the teleportation plaza. She had also reached the 8th layer of life and death realm. Nalang Tian and Gong Sun Bai were at the 9th layer of life and death realm. The most powerful one, Dongfang Ri, had even reached the frightening life and death realm 10th layer. Even 10 Lin Fengs wouldn't be able to defeat such a strong cultivator. The upper heaven gate expert, Yuan Qing, is guarding this place. It seems like I won't be able to leave. Lin Feng frowned. This was a very tricky situation. Yuan Qing was at the 8th layer of life and death realm. She wasn't someone Lin Feng could contend against. Lin Feng was very clear about this. Now, he needed to find another way to leave Nanzhou. He carefully inquired about the powers that were relatively close to Nanzhou City and had teleportation portals. Lin Feng planned to use a teleportation portal to go to another province. No matter how strong the upper heaven gate was, their sphere of influence was limited to Nanzhou. If Lin Feng could successfully reach another province, he could use a space-time wormhole to leave, but it would take a while. Lin Feng flew out of Nanzhou City. However, what Lin Feng didn't expect was that there wasn't just one upper heaven gate expert guarding Nanzhou City, but 2. Apart from Yuan Qing, there was also Gong Sunbai. When Lin Feng flew out of the city, Gong Sunbai, who was standing on a tower, saw Lin Feng in the crowd. He frowned slightly and took out a portrait of Lin Feng. When Lin Feng had killed the upper heaven gate expert, Zhang Qianma, many people had seen it. Therefore, it wasn't difficult to draw a portrait of Lin Feng. Swoosh! Gong Sunbai's body flickered and disappeared. When he was flying out of the city, he suddenly felt a cold and terrifying aura enveloping his body. His expression changed slightly. He turned around and slapped behind him. Bang! A muffled sound of collision was heard. Lin Feng was sent flying a few hundred meters. Cough, cough, cough. He coughed violently. He felt his blood boil, and he almost coughed up blood. Not bad, little brat. You managed to block my attack. However, you won't be able to escape today. Gong Sunbai smiled coldly. He raised his right hand and threw a punch at Lin Feng. Wait, I have something to say. Lin Feng suddenly shouted, "Do you have any last wishes before you die?" Gong Sunbai sneered and could not help but stop. Lin Feng didn't say anything. He just turned around and flew away. In an instant, he had left Nanzhou City. Little brat, how dare you trick me? When he saw Lin Feng running away, Gong Sunbai realized that he had been tricked. He flew into a rage and chased after Lin Feng. Is that young cultivator the upper heaven gate expert is chasing after? Many people were shocked. Yuan Qing quickly learned that Lin Feng had appeared, and she quickly chased after him. The strong cultivators of upper heaven gate all moved out to search for Lin Feng. Outside of southern Yu City, there was a vast forest. Lin Feng ran into it. He wanted to get rid of Gong Sunbai, but Gong Sunbai was too fast. He was chasing after him. Gong Sunbai used an ancient forbidden weapon to increase his speed and catch up with Lin Feng. Lin Feng fought fiercely. He had almost been killed by Gong Sunbai, but in the end, he had escaped with injuries. As expected, of a cultivator of the 9th layer of the life and death layer. Lin Feng stopped in a forest to rest. He refined a jade leaf stone to recover his spiritual energy. Little brat, you have nowhere to run. When I catch you, I'll turn you into ashes. Gong Sunbai flew over from the distance. His face was filled with killing intent. He rushed down, trying to kill Lin Feng. But as soon as he landed in the forest, deployment marks intertwined and trapped Gong Sunbai. Lin Feng had set up a few simple deployment spells when he was resting. Even though they could trap Gong Sunbai, they couldn't keep him trapped for too long. After Gong Sunbai was trapped, Lin Feng soared into the sky and flew away. He had to use a teleportation portal to leave quickly because Gong Sunbai was too strong. He couldn't fight against him. Besides, the other 3 strong cultivators had probably heard the news and were rushing over. If the 4 strong cultivators came together, Lin Feng knew that he would die. Chapter 1037. The Crouching Tiger Sect was an ancient power that was attached to the Tuoba family of the southern region city. This power was very powerful and was located in the Crouching Tiger Mountain Range. Outside the Crouching Tiger Mountain Range, there were many mountains. If one looked down from the sky, they could vaguely see that the mountain range was like a ferocious tiger resting on the ground, ready to pounce at any time. Lin Feng had a hard time shaking off Gong Sunbai, who was chasing after him. He arrived at the Crouching Tiger Sect and wanted to use the sect's teleportation array to leave. Many cultivators came to visit the Crouching Tiger Sect. Some were old friends, some were asking for medicine, and some wanted to join the sect to cultivate. Of course, there was no lack of cultivators like Lin Feng, who wanted to use the teleportation array to teleport through the void. Thousands of people gathered in the teleportation valley, waiting for the teleportation array to be activated. Lin Feng was standing at the foot of a tree, calmly waiting. Soon, the elders of the Crouching Tiger Sect, who were in charge of the teleportation array, arrived. Someone patrolled the cultivators who were taking the teleportation array, and then the elders left. What's going on? Why did they leave? We're wasting time. Hurry up and activate the teleportation array. Many people were unhappy. A deacon said, "There's a problem with the core array. The elders have already gone to ask the Grand Elder to repair the array. They will repair it as soon as possible." Many people were complaining, but there was nothing they could do. There was a problem with the array, so they could only wait quietly. Soon, the Grand Elder of the Crouching Tiger Sect, Wang Daoping, arrived. He was a skinny old man who looked to be in his 50s. When he arrived, he cupped his fists and said apologetically, "I've made everyone wait. The problem with the teleportation array today is the fault of the Crouching Tiger Sect. We're very sorry for wasting everyone's time, but don't worry, the teleportation array will be repaired soon. Once it's fixed, everyone will only need to pay half the original amount of spirit stones to leave. This is a small gift from the Crouching Tiger Sect." Hearing Wang Daoping's words, the cultivators who had been waiting anxiously looked much better. Wang Daoping led a group of people into the valley to repair the teleportation array. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The teleportation array couldn't be repaired in a short time, and he didn't have much time to waste. Gong Sunbai would probably come looking for him soon. Lin Feng decided to leave. 10,000 li away from the Crouching Tiger Sect was a group called the Starry Mountain. It was also an ancient, influential group. Maybe he could use the teleportation portal there. It wouldn't take him too long. Thinking about that, Lin Feng flew outside. At that moment, Wang Daoping and the four elders who had been in the valley to repair the deployment spell came out and surrounded Lin Feng. Lin Feng frowned and asked indifferently, "What's the meaning of this?" "Young friend, you look familiar to me, so I would like to invite you to my sect for a drink. Will you give me some face?" Wang Daoping said with a smile. Lin Feng said indifferently and prepared to leave, but Wang Daoping sneered and said, "So, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite." Wang Daoping's hands formed a series of seals. Buzz, waves of energy swept through the area. Then, lines of runes intertwined in the air. The array sealed the sky and locked down the earth, trapping Lin Feng within. What's going on? Why are Wang Daoping and the others trapping that young cultivator? Many cultivators were confused. They looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Boom! At that moment, a terrifying aura came from afar. Gongsun Bai walked over. It's Gongsun Bai, one of the four strong cultivators of the Upper Heaven Gates Law Enforcement Hall. Seeing Gongsun Bai coming from afar, many people exclaimed. Obviously, Gongsun Bai was very famous in the South Continent. His arrival had caused a certain commotion. "Lord Gongsun, this brat has been trapped by our array. He's like a turtle in a jar now." Wang Daoping laughed proudly. "Wang Daoping, you've done well. You've done a good job trapping this brat. Once I kill him, I won't mistreat you." Gongsun Bai smiled. Wang Daoping was overjoyed and quickly said, "It's my honor to be able to work for Lord Gongsun." The Upper Heavens Gate is really powerful. Even these ancient powers can be mobilized to find me. But do they really think that a mere ray can trap me? Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as he soared into the sky. "Quick, activate the array to attack this brat. Don't let him escape." Wang Daoping shouted. He and the four elders activated the array to attack Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng was able to shuttle through the array as he pleased. Finally, he rushed out of the array. Then, he flipped his right hand. Buzz. A huge palm that covered an area of 10 acres condensed in the air. The huge energy palm smashed down towards Wang Daoping. Wang Daoping and the other four, who were enveloped by the huge energy palm, suddenly felt that their bodies couldn't move at all. Originally, they had sinister smiles on their faces, as if they were determined to capture Lin Feng. But now, everyone's faces were filled with shock and horror. No, seeing the huge energy palm descending from the sky, Wang Daoping and the other four let out terrified cries. Bang! However, in the next moment, the palm fell and Wang Daoping and the other four were directly smashed into meat paste. Lin Feng didn't stop and quickly flew into the distance. Gongsun Bai, with a gloomy expression, quickly chased after him. That young cultivator is so powerful. So he's the person the Upper Heaven Gate is looking for. The Upper Heaven Gate sent out so many experts, but they couldn't take down that young cultivator. Wang Daoping actually dared to interfere in this matter. He's really courting death. In the valley, many cultivators who were waiting to be teleported away were discussing. At this time, Lin Feng quickly flew into the distance. After flying for 1,000 miles, he still couldn't shake off Gongsun Bai. Boom! In a mass grave, Lin Feng ran into trouble. A terrifying chi came from the left, and Yuan Qing walked over. "Boy, your time of death has come." A gloomy voice came from the right, and a middle-aged cultivator walked over. He was one of the four great experts, Na Lan Tian. "You're really jumping up and down like a monkey. I actually went to the Upper Heaven Gate to look for you for so long. But today I finally found you. Everything should be over." In front of him, a pale-faced, scholarly cultivator, also walked over. Lin Feng felt that this person was the most dangerous. Lin Feng guessed that he should be Dongfang Ri, the strongest of the four great experts, a cultivator of the 10th life and death layer. The four great experts surrounded Lin Feng. This was a situation of certain death. Chapter 1038. For strong cultivators surrounded Lin Feng, it was extremely dangerous. Any one of them could kill Lin Feng alone, not to mention four strong cultivators at the same time. Lin Feng's expression became serious. The situation was dangerous, and he was thinking of a way to escape. Of course, Lin Feng knew that it wouldn't be easy, but he wasn't someone who gave up easily. Do you have any last words? You can tell us now. Dongfang Ri looked at Lin Feng indifferently, as if he was looking at a dead man. In his opinion, even if Lin Feng grew wings, he wouldn't be able to escape today. You want to keep me here? Let's see if you can. Lin Feng took out the revered sword mound. Even when he fought with Gong Sun Bai, he didn't use the revered sword mound. That was because using the revered sword mound to control 3 swords at once was too taxing on the body. With Lin Feng's current cultivation level, he couldn't hold on for too long. Therefore, he had to choose the right time to use the revered sword mound. And now, facing the siege of 4 powerhouses, it had reached a point where there was no room for delay. Open, Lin Feng pointed at the revered sword mound with his right hand. The treasure immediately flew into the air. With a click, the box opened automatically. The 3 swords turned into 3 beams of light and flew out, floating above Lin Feng. This is the revered sword mound. The 4 masters' eyes widened. The 4 of them were indeed from top forces. They recognized the revered sword mound at first glance. This boy has amazing treasures. If we kill him, we might get benefits beyond our imagination. Yuan Qing smiled maliciously. Boom! The 4 masters attacked together. In the air, there was a destructive force. Heavenly tribulation light, domineering fist of heavens and earth. Cloud sea blue waves technique. Heavenly destruction palm. The 4 masters' attacks gathered together and blasted towards Lin Feng. The aura that rippled out could only be described as horrifying. After all, they were too strong. Revered sword control technique. Sword will like a dragon. Lin Feng's hands continuously formed hand seals. The 3 swords combined together to form the image of a huge dragon. The sword was like a dragon. The dragon was like a sword. The sword cleaved the world. Dragon roams the universe. The sword will dragon merged with the 3 swords and swept towards the attacks of the 4 powerhouses. Bang! The attacks from both sides collided, causing the void to crack. Waves of destructive power suddenly erupted, and in the end, the attacks of both sides were annihilated. As expected of the Most High Sword Tomb, you're so weak, yet you're using the Most High Sword Tomb and the 3 swords to block our attacks. You're really shocking, but it's useless. We only used 30% of our strength to test the Most High Sword Tomb's power. Now we're done. The Most High Sword Tomb is a treasure worthy of its reputation. It's time for it to change owners. Dongfang Ri's voice was as cold as ice. Boom! As soon as Dongfang Ri finished speaking, the 4 powerhouses started attacking Lin Feng again, just as Dongfang Ri had said before. They had only wanted to test the might of the revered sword tomb with their first attack, so the might of the second attack was far greater than the might of the first attack. The 4 powerhouses attacked again, and Lin Feng continued to use the revered sword control technique, controlling the 3 swords to attack. The 2 sides collided for the second time, but this time the sword will dragon formed by the 3 swords was directly broken. The tyrannical energy bombarded Lin Feng's body and sent Lin Feng flying. Wah! Lin Feng spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. You can't take it anymore after only using 50% of your strength? How pitifully weak, Yu Wenqing said contemptuously, her face full of disdain. Is it worth showing off to be surrounded by 4 people? In terms of shamelessness, you're really unparalleled. Lin Feng stopped and sneered. Brat, you're about to die, and you still dare to mock me? I won't kill you directly, but I'll cut off your flesh piece by piece and feed it to the dogs. Yu Wenqing looked at Lin Feng with a gloomy expression. Feed you? Lin Feng sneered. You're courting death. Yu Wenqing shouted angrily. Even though she was strong, she was always ruthless and irritable. The other 3 powerhouses were indifferent to Lin Feng's mockery, but Yu Wenqing couldn't stand it. Yu Wenqing, why are you angry with a dying man? Dong Fengri said. Boom. The 4 powerhouses attacked for the 3rd time, and once again they attacked Lin Feng with a powerful attack. Lin Feng took out the 7 treasures glazed pagoda to protect himself, and at the same time controlled the 3 swords to resist the 4 powerhouses' attacks. However, this time, the 4 powerhouses' attacks were even more powerful than before. In the second attack, the 4 experts used 50% of their strength. This time, they used 70% of their strength. The sword intent formed by the 3 swords was broken in an instant, and then the terrifying destructive power bombarded the 7 treasures glazed pagoda. Even though the defense of the 7 treasures glazed pagoda was amazing, it couldn't stop the 4 powerhouses' attacks. The defense of the 7 treasures glazed pagoda was broken. Lin Feng was blown away, and his face was pale. Boom. The 4 powerhouses attacked again, and they didn't want to give Lin Feng any time to react. Oh no! Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. He didn't have time to dodge the attacks of the 4 strong cultivators. The 7 treasures glazed pagoda's defense had been broken, and it had automatically returned to his dantian. He wouldn't be able to use it for a few days. The situation was extremely dangerous, and Lin Feng couldn't find a way to deal with the 4 powerhouses. He couldn't help but feel anxious. Don't bully Bibi's big brother. At this critical moment, a rainbow-colored light suddenly rushed out of the beast's slave pouch. A chubby little beast the size of a palm rushed out. The little beast's entire body was snow-white and charmingly naive. At this moment, it was shouting angrily. It opened its mouth and swallowed the attacks of the 4 powerhouses in one gulp. How is this possible? The 4 powerhouses looked as if they had seen a ghost. Bibi has hatched. Lin Feng looked at Bibi in shock. He already knew that Bibi was a very powerful creature. Now that it had hatched, it had swallowed the attacks of the 4 powerhouses. This ability was terrifying. However, Bibi was still young. After swallowing the attacks of the 4 powerhouses, its little belly suddenly became round. Kill this brat and capture this heaven-defying little beast. The 4 experts rushed over. Swoosh! Bibi waved its little paw, and a rainbow-colored light surged out, enveloping Lin Feng and the regal sword mound. Then Bibi carried Lin Feng through the void and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1039. Swish! There was a flash of light in the sky, and Bibi and Lin Feng appeared. Big brother, are you all right? Bibi blinked her big bright eyes and asked in a childish voice. Haha, I'm fine. You've finally hatched, but the classic of mountains and seas. A record of divine beasts doesn't seem to have a divine beast like you. Lin Feng looked at Bibi suspiciously. It had a snow-white body, a pair of big bright eyes, and a charmingly naive appearance. It was really lovable, no matter how one looked at it. It looked like a cute and harmless little guy. However, this little guy had an unimaginably terrifying ability. It was enough to move people. However, the little guy's origin was too shocking. Lin Feng had thought that he would be able to find out what kind of race it was after it hatched, but now that it had hatched, he still had no clue. What's the classic of mountains and seas? Bibi asked innocently. It's a book. Lin Feng said. Bibi drooled and asked, Can I eat it? She was really a foodie. Lin Feng rubbed Bibi's head and said, Books are for reading, not eating. Bibi doesn't like books, but Bibi likes fruits. The little guy waved his claws. In an instant, 2 30,000-year-old serpent spirit fruits were taken out by the little guy. Lin Feng had obtained them when he was training on a foreign planet. Crunch, crunch. Bei began to chew on the food with great relish. Eat slowly. No one is going to steal them from you, said Lin Feng while smiling. He didn't stay for long. He quickly left to find a place to recover. 100 miles away, in a carriage, a 5 or 6-year-old girl was lying in the arms of an old woman. The little girl looked like she was carved from jade. She was very cute. However, her face was extremely pale and her body was trembling. The old woman held the little girl in her arms. Even the old woman's body was constantly freezing. The old woman coughed from time to time. The cold qi invaded her body, causing her to suffer serious injuries. The old woman coughed up blood. The little girl seemed to have been awakened by the old woman's cough. She looked at the old woman's pale face and struggled. It's all Little Moon's fault. If it weren't for Little Moon, Granny wouldn't be coughing. The little girl blamed herself. Although she was young, she was already very sensible. The old woman tightly hugged Little Moon and smiled as she said, Granny is fine. Little Moon, don't worry about Granny. Grandma's body is cold. Grandma quickly put Little Moon down. The little girl said, Grandma loves to hug Little Moon like this. The old woman said kindly, but Little Moon doesn't want to see Grandma suffer. Little Moon doesn't want to see Grandma cough. Little Moon is very sad. Little Moon has implicated Grandma. The little girl constantly blamed herself. From time to time, pearl-like tears fell from her big, watery eyes. Silly child, don't blame yourself. When we reach the Heaven Vein Fire Valley, Little Moon will be better. The old woman lovingly stroked the little girl's head. Little Moon also looked expectant. Little Moon will definitely be better. Little Moon must be filial to Granny in the future. Good child. When the old woman heard Little Moon's considerate words, tears flashed in her old eyes. She hugged Little Moon tightly in her arms. 2 hours later, a voice came from outside. Granny, we've arrived at the Heaven Vein Fire Valley. The Heaven Vein Fire Valley was a very famous place in the primitive forests of the southern continent. The Heaven Vein Fire Valley was connected to the underground world of fire, so the flames covered the entire valley. The flames here were extremely dangerous. Many of the flames could even melt Dao weapons. Only a few fearless alchemists would enter the Heaven Vein Fire Valley to find powerful flames to refine. Normally, no one would come to the Heaven Vein Fire Valley. Today, this Granny brought Little Moon to the Heaven Vein Fire Valley to suppress Little Moon's Earth-Een-Cold Meridian. The Earth-Een-Cold Meridian was also a kind of constitution. However, this kind of constitution was very strange. The body would be extremely cold. Even the blood would be frozen. It was said that people who had the Earth-Een-Cold Meridian couldn't live past 5 years old. Little Moon had been tortured by the Earth-Een-Cold Meridian since she was young. However, she had always been very optimistic. Perhaps it was because she had experienced too much pain and torture since she was young. So even though she was very young, Little Moon was very sensible. Of course, the Creator created the Earth-Een-Cold Meridian. Naturally, it wasn't to destroy everyone who had the Earth-Een-Cold Meridian. In the long years, there were always a few lucky people who successfully suppressed the cold energy of the Earth-Een-Cold Meridian and gradually mastered it. Although such people were very rare, there were still 4 or 5 people who had the Earth-Een cold meridian, who survived in the billions of years since the ancient times. The most powerful of them was a person called the Earth-Een Holy Emperor. It was said that he relied on the Earth-Een cold meridian, and his battle strength was unparalleled. Even the possessors of the top 10 ancient bloodlines didn't want to be enemies with him. It could be seen how terrifying the Earth-Een cold meridian was. However, the survival rate of this kind of constitution was too low. Perhaps it was because of this that the Earth-Een cold meridian couldn't prove its greatness and couldn't leave a glorious chapter in history. Granny held Little Moon's hand and walked towards the Heaven Vane Fire Valley. "Granny, stop here and wait for Little Moon. Little Moon will definitely get better." Little Moon tried to smile. Then she ran towards the Heaven Vane Fire Valley. The old woman shed tears. Little Moon was too sensible, but fate was full of ups and downs. Now, Little Moon was almost 5 years old. If she couldn't solve the problem of the Earth-Een cold meridian, only death would await her. The old woman knew that even the Heaven Vane Fire Valley could only temporarily suppress the Earth-Een cold meridian in Little Moon's body. It couldn't truly solve the crisis Little Moon was facing. Little Moon entered the Fire Valley, and her body took the initiative to devour all kinds of flames in the Fire Valley. The power of the Earth-Een cold meridian collided with the flames. Little Moon's body fell to the ground and convulsed violently. She covered her mouth and tried not to make a sound. She was afraid that her granny would be worried and sad if she heard. The two forces clashed again and again, making Little Moon suffer a fate worse than death. Little Moon will definitely be able to persevere. Little Moon will definitely survive. Little Moon's young face was filled with determination that didn't match her age. However, the stubborn look on her face as she endured the pain and didn't allow herself to make a sound was truly heartbreaking. 15 kilometers away, a group of black-robed men looked in the direction of the Heaven Vane Fire Valley. "Is that little girl the descendant of Emperor Taichin of the Yao race?" asked a masked cultivator with his hands clasped behind his back. "That's right. She's the only descendant of Emperor Taichin," said a black-robed man. Chapter 1040. In the cave, Lin Feng sat cross-legged. He first used his immortal divine body to heal his injuries, then refined a jade leaf stone to recover his magic power. Finally, he took out some jerky and spirit fruits and ate them to recover his strength. Crunch, crunch. Bibi also hugged a spirit fruit and gnawed on it. Its little belly was round. It had eaten 10 precious 30,000-year-old spirit fruits in a short amount of time. Lin Feng didn't feel bad. So what if the spirit fruits were precious? They were meant to be used, and since Bibi liked to eat them, they had a use for them. After Lin Feng recovered, he looked at Bibi, who was rolling on the ground. "Little guy, come here." Lin Feng waved at Bibi. Bibi clumsily got up from the ground and squeaked a few times before jumping into Lin Feng's palm. Because it had just hatched, Bibi's body was still very small. Lin Feng asked, "Little guy, what race are you?" Bibi put on a thoughtful expression. Its big round eyes looked around a few times. Then it asked in a childish voice, "What is race? Can it be eaten?" Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little guy really couldn't stop talking about food. It was practically the reincarnation of a glutton. It was obviously not realistic to want to know Bibi's race from it. At the very least, it was impossible for him to know at this stage. Perhaps as Bibi grew up, the memories of its race would be awakened in its bloodline. At that time, he would be able to know its race. "Big brother, Bibi is sleepy." The little guy lay in Lin Feng's hand and soon fell asleep. Bibi was still a cub, after all. Cubs tended to be more sleepy because they had just been born. In fact, it wasn't just cubs who were sleepy. Even human babies were sleepy. They spent most of their time sleeping, every day. After Bibi fell asleep, Lin Feng put it back into the beast's slave bag. Lin Feng continued to adjust his condition while thinking about how to leave the South Continent. Now that he was wanted by the Heavenly Gate, he probably couldn't use the transportation formations of the various factions. If he wanted to set up a transportation formation himself, he didn't have enough materials. However, if he flew, it would take too much time. Lin Feng felt that it was quite troublesome to leave the South Continent. Many of the raging flames in the Heaven Vein Fire Valley were absorbed by Little Moon's body. Little Moon's originally ice-cold body finally returned to normal. She dragged her tired body out and finally walked out of the Heaven Vein Fire Valley. "Grandma, little Yu-Yu, Yu-Yu, Yu-Yu-Yu." The old woman ran over and hugged the filthy Little Moon in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Yu-Yu-Yu, Yu-Yu, Yu-Yu-Yu." However, the child did not make a single sound. Enduring such great pain, you, well, little you was too sensible. But why didn't the heavens let such a sensible child live longer? You wanted to curse the heavens. Why didn't good people live long while bad people lived freely? "Grandma, don't cry. Little you is fine. Little you won't make you worry anymore." Little you smiled innocently. Her smile was so pure that it made one's heart ache. You was sad because she didn't know how long little you could last. 3 months, 1 month, or maybe only half a month. "Grandma is happy. Good child, we can't stay here for long. Let's go." She held little Yu's hand and boarded the carriage. The carriage quickly left under the escort of more than 50 monstrous cultivators. However, not long after he left, a dense crowd of figures came from afar, surrounding the place so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. "Who are you?" An elder of the demon race shouted in a deep voice. "Ha!" The descendant of the monstrous Tai Ching Emperor came to the South Continent and left without saying goodbye. "Do you think the humans of the South Continent have no one?" said the masked cultivator with a smile. "The humans of the South Continent, are you from the Upper Heavenly Gate?" The monstrous elder's expression changed. "Upper Heavenly Gate? We never said we were from the Upper Heavenly Gate," replied the masked cultivator indifferently. Boom! A terrifying aura spread out from the left. Another group of experts appeared. Then, another group of experts appeared from the right. Soon, more experts appeared from the rear. Experts appeared from all 4 directions. 1 clan, 3 palaces. The monstrous elder's expression turned grave. "The Tai Ching Emperor's clan has no enmity with your 1 clan, 3 palaces, right? Why are you stopping us?" Yu's voice came from the carriage. "Those who are not of our clan will be killed," said one of the experts with a cold smile. In the ancient times, the gods fought and the Qianwu continent was affected. Our ancestor, the Tai Ching Emperor, protected the continent. Our emperor was severely injured in order to protect the continent and died prematurely. Even if you are not grateful for our ancestors' kindness, we will not say anything. But now, you want to kill the only descendant of the Tai Ching Emperor? Do you have a conscience?" said the old woman angrily. "What's the point of bringing up the past now? Besides, who knows if what happened in the ancient times is true? Maybe it's just a story made up by your clan. Everyone, what are you waiting for? Kill these people and capture the descendant of the Tai Ching Emperor," said the masked cultivator with a cold smile. "Kill them." Immediately after that, a sky-shaking battle cry rang out as a dense swarm of experts charged towards the Yao clan cultivators. "Escort grandmother and the little princess away," shouted one of the monstrous cultivators. Boom! The two sides immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The monstrous cultivators were too few. The one clan, 3 palaces, had dozens of times more experts than the monstrous cultivators. Pooh, pooh. Many monstrous cultivators were beheaded or had their bodies torn apart. They died on the spot, their corpses falling to the ground. The old woman rushed out of the carriage with Little Moon in her arms. Under the escort of dozens of experts, she tried to break out of the encirclement. Kill. They chose a direction to break out of the encirclement. A few monstrous cultivators led the way, but there were too many experts from the one clan, 3 palaces. Little princess, you have to live. A few of the monstrous cultivators shouted in grief. They rushed forward dauntlessly. Bang, bang, bang. The bodies of the monstrous cultivators exploded. They had chosen to die in the most tragic way possible, creating a gap in the encirclement. Woo! Seeing so many of her loved ones die, Little Moon wept in grief. Go! The old woman rushed out of the encirclement with Little Moon in her arms. However, what made them despair was that in the distant mountains there were figures flickering. A dense crowd of black-robed cultivators appeared. This place had long been surrounded, and the opening created by the self-detonation of several demon clan elders was only the first opening. It's useless. We've already set up an inescapable net to kill you, said the masked cultivator with a cold smile. Kill them! The deafening battle cries resounded through the clouds. Densely packed experts surrounded and attacked the monster clan cultivators. Pooh! Pooh! Monstrous cultivators were killed one after another. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the sky red. Chapter 1041. What powerful undulations! What's going on? Is there a huge battle? Lin Feng, who was meditating in the cave, opened his eyes. He was astonished. He quickly walked out of the cave and arrived outside. Then he looked into the distance. Although he couldn't see anything, he could sense the powerful undulations in the air. When cultivators fought, the shock waves could spread hundreds of li away, not to mention that Lin Feng was only 100 li away from where the battle was taking place. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that he could sense the undulations from the battle in the distance. A battle between cultivators, or between cultivators and fierce beasts in the forest. Lin Feng was puzzled. Such powerful undulations meant that the battle was no small matter. He quickly flew in the direction of the battle to see what was going on. Be careful! Don't kill the descendant of Emperor Taiching, shouted the leader of the one school and 3 prefectures when he saw that some experts had almost killed Little Moon. They wanted to refine divine pills. They needed the blood of living people, not the blood of dead people. The difference between the blood of the dead and the blood of the living was too great. Yes, replied the cultivators surrounding the old woman. They held back a lot when they attacked. The Yao had very few people to begin with. When they were surrounded by the one school and 3 prefectures, many of their experts had been killed by the 4 great powers. Now, there were only about 20 of them left. The one school and 3 prefectures still had thousands of people left. They had made ample preparations. The one school and 3 prefectures of Nanzhou had always been suspicious of each other. However, when there was a common interest, the one school and 3 prefectures could unite. For example, today, the experts of the one school and 3 prefectures had joined forces to kill the Yao and capture the descendant of Emperor Taiching. Those who didn't know about their secret struggles would think that the 4 great powers were working together as allies. A dozen cultivators stood on top of a mountain a dozen miles away. They were all looking at the battle. The leader of the group was a young man. The young man was dressed in white. He was tall and slender, and his eyes shone like stars. He was extremely handsome. His body was clearly standing there, but it gave people a fleeting feeling. Gongsun Wushu was the son of Gongsun Xian, the sect master of the Heaven Gate. He was one of the supreme geniuses of the 3,000 continents of the Tianwu continent. His cultivation had reached the transcendent realm. He was definitely an existence that could fight against a cultivator at Wangfu Qingtian's level. Prince, it seems like you don't need to do anything to deal with these beasts, a cultivator cautiously asked. Gongsun Wushu said slowly, "This battle won't end so quickly." His deep eyes looked at the great battle in the distance. No one knew what Gongsun Wushu was thinking at the moment. Poof! Pooh! More and more Yao cultivators were killed. Blood splattered everywhere as their corpses fell to the ground. Soon, there were only a dozen Yao cultivators left. It wouldn't be long before these demons were all killed. "Grandma, please take the little princess away. She's the only descendant of the great emperor." One after another, the Yao cultivators roared and charged forward. They chose to self-detonate and died tragically, blasting open a path of blood through the dense encirclement. After a Yao cultivator self-detonated, a second Yao cultivator would rush forward and self-detonate as well. This scene was too tragic and stirring. Woo-woo! Little Moon cried bitterly. She saw her family members die so tragically. It was a huge blow to her young heart. The old woman looked sad, but she didn't stop them. She knew that if she wanted to save the little princess, she had to sacrifice herself. Even if she had to sacrifice herself, she wouldn't hesitate. "Crazy! These Yao cultivators are all crazy," shouted the cultivators of the one family and 3 prefectures in horror. They had never seen such crazy people who didn't cherish their lives. Perhaps these people didn't understand what it meant to protect. In this world, there were some things and some people that needed to be protected with one's life. In the eyes of these demon race cultivators, Little Moon was someone who was worth protecting with their lives. Bang, bang, bang. More than a dozen Yao cultivators self-detonated one after another. The old woman carried the little princess and rushed towards the northwest through the gap that a dozen or so demon cultivators had torn open with great difficulty at the cost of their self-detonation. Do it. However, the old woman couldn't leave with the little princess because there was another force. It was the experts by Gongsun Wushu's side. They had been watching the battle and hadn't made a move. Now, it was time for them to make a move. As soon as Gongsun Wushu's voice fell, hundreds of cultivators rushed out and attacked the old woman. The cultivators behind them also caught up. This place could be described as an inescapable net. It was truly despairing. Heavenly law embodiment technique. The old woman shouted, and her body began to grow. Soon, the old woman's body turned into a 1,000-meter-tall giant. The old woman held Little Moon in her left hand and slapped the cultivators surrounding her with her right hand. Many cultivators were killed by the old woman's slap. The old woman, who had transformed into the heavenly law embodiment technique, had greatly increased her battle strength. She forced a bloody path out of the encirclement. Humph! Gongsun Wushu, who was standing on a mountain peak in the distance, had a cold expression on his face. Whoosh! Light flashed in his hand. A war spear appeared. The war spear was pitch black, and it flickered with a cold and bloodthirsty aura. Gongsun Wushu directly threw the war spear. The war spear pierced through the void. Pooh! In the next moment, the war spear pierced the old woman's heart. The old woman, who was running wildly, was on the verge of collapse. She lowered her head and looked at the bloody hole in her chest with a sorrowful expression. "My death is not regrettable, but what about the little princess? Great Emperor, you protected the Tianwu continent in the past. Now, Your descendant is going to be captured by these people to be refined into medicine. Was everything you did in the past worth it?" The old woman cried bitterly, and her huge body fell to the ground with a loud bang. The old woman's magic power dissipated, and her body returned to its original state. Little Moon knelt beside the old woman and cried in pain and despair. "Grandma, what's wrong? Don't leave Little Moon behind." Rumble! In the void, a large hand condensed and grabbed Little Moon. This was the energy hand that Gongsun Wushu had condensed. Bang! A figure walked over from afar and shattered the giant hand of energy. The old woman raised her head with difficulty and looked at the young cultivator, who had appeared with pleading eyes. "I beg you to take her to the great Rock, king of the great Peng, king of the great kindness. I will repay in the next life. Don't worry, I will protect her." Lin Feng picked up Little Moon and quickly rushed into the distance. "Brat, you're courting death." The experts of the One Clan and 3 prefectures roared angrily. The old woman struggled to get up, and her body began to swell. In an instant, it exploded, and destructive energy surged out, swallowing a large part of the forest and many cultivators who had chased after her. Blood rained down. The old woman's blood dyed the ground red. With endless sorrow, the old woman's life passed away. Chapter 1042. Little Moon was tired from crying, and she fell asleep in Lin Feng's arms. She was a descendant of Emperor Taiching, and she had sovereign blood. It was no wonder that the cultivators of the one sect, 3 prefectures, wanted to capture her. Sovereign blood was far more effective than divine essence. Fusing sovereign blood into a pill could raise it to the level of a divine pill. Even though Lin Feng didn't know why the 3 governments wanted to capture Xiao Yuyu, he could guess what was going on. The methods of the one sect, 3 prefectures, were truly shameless. Emperor Taiching had done the Martial Heaven continent a great favor in the past, capturing a 4 or 5-year-old girl to refine her blood into a pill was a violation of humanity. The sacred emperor said, "Man is born good." It was just that with the passage of time, who knew where the conscience of these people from the major factions had long been lost. In their eyes, there was no such thing as good. For the sake of their own benefits, they would do anything. The one sect, 3 prefectures. I thought that the 3 prefectures were much kinder than the Heavenly Gate, but it seems I was too naive. How could they have any conscience? Their conscience must have been eaten by a dog, thought Lin Feng angrily, but then he sighed. He had no choice but to sigh. That kind of powerful and influential group was unscrupulous in their actions. Whereas the great Peng King's ancestral land, Lin Feng was a bit worried. The great Peng King was a peerless genius, and he had survived for 300 years. Lin Feng and the great Peng King knew each other, and they had once fought over fossils. Later, when they had left, Lin Feng and the great Peng King's nephew, Jin Xingyuan, had entered the swamp of death together. They had gone through many hardships, and the 2 of them had formed a deep friendship. However, Lin Feng had never been to the southern continent before, so he didn't know where the great Peng King's ancestral land was. Now, he can only take 1 step at a time. At night, Lin Feng found a hidden cave and used a formation to seal the cave. Then he rested inside the cave. Little Moon was curled up in Lin Feng's arms, its little hands tightly clutching onto Lin Feng's clothes. In its sleep, it would occasionally let out frightened sleep talk. No matter how sensible Little Moon was, she was still less than 5 years old. Today, she had seen so many of her clansmen die tragically, and her grandmother had also died tragically in front of her. This was an unimaginable blow to Little Moon's young heart. "Big brother, where's Little Moon's grandma?" After an unknown amount of time, Lin Feng heard a sobbing voice. He opened his eyes and looked at little Moon, who was curled up in his arms. He didn't know when she had woken up. She looked at him pitifully. She went to a place very, very far away. Lin Feng said softly, "Little Moon, will you never see your grandma again?" Tears rolled down Little Moon's cheeks like pearls. Little Moon kept wiping them away, but they couldn't stop flowing. Grandma is tired. She needs to rest. She needs to sleep for many years. Lin Feng said gently, "Will Little Moon be able to see her again?" Little Moon looked at Lin Feng expectantly. She looked so pitiful that Lin Feng felt his heart break. Who could bear to say such cruel words to such a naive, flawless little girl? "Yes, I believe that Little Moon will be able to see your grandma again." Lin Feng said, "That's great. Little Moon will be able to see your grandma again." Little Moon was very happy. She wrapped her arms around Lin Feng's neck and leaned against Lin Feng's chest. She quickly fell asleep again. At night, several groups of cultivators passed by the mountain where Lin Feng and Little Moon were hiding. However, they couldn't find any traces of Lin Feng. "That boy's identity has been confirmed. He's the boy we were chasing in the gate of heaven. He's alone with a burden. He can't have gone far." A few cultivators were talking in low voices. Lin Feng, who was hiding in the cave, happened to hear them. Very quickly, the cultivators left. "I have to catch someone. Only then will I know where the great rocks are." However, these cultivators gather in groups of 3 to 5. Once they appear, Little Moon, and I will be exposed. I can't care too much. If I don't know where the great rocks are, when the 3 prefectures send more strong cultivators to search for me and Little Moon, only death will await us. Lin Feng's expression was gloomy. He knew that he had to take action. Time waited for no one. "Little Moon, hug your big brother's neck and bury your head in my chest. No matter what happens, don't let go and don't raise your head. You hear me?" Lin Feng said gently, "I hear you." Little Moon nodded obediently. Lin Feng took out a long robe and tied Little Moon to his body. Little Moon was very obedient. She hugged Lin Feng's neck and buried her head in Lin Feng's chest. Lin Feng calmly waited for the cultivators from the 3 prefectures to arrive. Not long after, 5 cultivators flew over. Lin Feng rushed out and used Sky Splitter to attack these cultivators. "Boy, you're courting death." A few cultivators roared and took out magic treasures to attack Lin Feng. "Kacha, kacha!" A few magic treasures were destroyed, and one cultivator after another was killed. Only one person was left alive. Lin Feng had intentionally let him live. That cultivator turned around and ran. Lin Feng quickly chased after him and grabbed his head. Soul Search! A powerful spiritual energy entered the cultivator's mind and forcefully searched his soul. "Ah!" The Upper Heaven Gate cultivator let out an incomparably shrill scream. Lin Feng got the answer he wanted. He broke the cultivator's neck and threw his corpse on the ground. Then Lin Feng carried Little Moon and quickly flew towards the territory of the Great Rocks. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the forest. Although the battle here was short, many people had already sensed it. Many people rushed in the direction of the original battle. "That boy will definitely go to the territory of the Great Rocks and kill him on the way," said the masked cultivator coldly. "Use the Jade Talisman to contact Qing Tian, and by Ri to stop that boy," said Gong Sun Wushu in a deep voice. "Yes," said a strong cultivator from the Upper Heaven Gate. He immediately took out a Jade Talisman and sent the message. Lin Feng flew for 3 days in the forest. He wanted to find a place to rest. He saw a mountain range in front of him and decided to hide there and rest. Lin Feng flew towards the mountain range. At that moment, The air behind him shook slightly. A skinny cultivator stepped out of the air and threw a punch at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. He reacted quickly and turned around to counter the attack with a punch. Bang! The two cultivators collided violently. Lin Feng had the impression a godly mountain had crashed into him. He was blown away, and his blood was boiling. He couldn't help but cough up blood. "Little boy, let's see how you're going to escape today." The person who had attacked was one of the four strong cultivators, Yu Wenqing. He walked towards Lin Feng coldly. His face was filled with killing intent. Chapter 1043. When he saw Yu Wenqing, Lin Feng's expression became grave. He was a terrifying cultivator who had broken through to the eighth life and death layer. His strength was unfathomable. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Yu Wenqing had already locked onto him. He couldn't avoid this battle. Lin Feng knew that he had to get rid of Yu Wenqing as quickly as possible. Otherwise, once the others arrived, he and little Yu would die. "Little Yu, hold on to your big brother. Don't be afraid." Lin Feng patted little Yu's back. "With big brother here, little Yu is not afraid." Said little Yu seriously, "Your big brother won't be able to save you because he can't even protect himself." Said Yu Wenqing with a cold smile. He threw a punch at Lin Feng. In a flash, a tide of energy appeared in the sky. It was called Heaven and Earth Tide Fist. The tide of energy was 10,000 zhang long, and it engulfed the sky. Lin Feng took a step forward and used his great death technique. A long river of death condensed in the void and slammed into the energy tide that was about to drown out everything. Lin Feng didn't hold back. He used his most powerful technique to fight against Yu Wenqing. Bang! The river of death directly destroyed the tide of energy. As expected of one of the 3,000 great spells, its power was tyrannical. Even though Lin Feng's cultivation level was much lower than Yu Wenqing's, he still relied on the great death technique to break Yu Wenqing's attack. The river of death swept towards Yu Wenqing. A powerful death energy surged out. The death energy started corroding Yu Wenqing's body. So it's the great death technique of the 3,000 great spells. You're really surprising me. You surprisingly have such a tyrannical divine ability. But what's the use of it? In front of absolute strength, your divine abilities can't harm me. Then Yu Wenqing took a step forward and threw 9 punches in a row. Bang! Bang! One punch after another landed on the river of death. The river of death collapsed. Dao death technique. Dao destruction technique. Lin Feng rushed over, condensing 2 origin characters. He fused the 2 origin characters together and blasted them toward Yu Wenqing. Yu Wenqing's expression was indifferent. She used the Heaven Calamity Light to destroy Lin Feng's 2 original Dao characters. 8 divine seals. Great suppression technique. Lin Feng once again activated 2 types of spirit techniques. His methods could be said to be endless. The 8 God-forbidding seals sealed Yu Wenqing's heavenly tribulation light. The great suppression technique directly suppressed Yu Wenqing. Yu Wenqing's expression changed slightly. She quickly retreated and used the sun-moon punch again, condensing the sun and the moon. The great suppression technique collided with the sun-moon divine fist, blocking the attack of the sun-moon divine fist. The Dao annihilation and the Dao death characters collided with Yu Wenqing's body and sent her flying. Wow! Yu Wenqing spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face became extremely pale. To think that I was actually injured by an ant like you. Then Yu Wenqing roared in anger. He was a strong cultivator, so he had his dignity. Now, he had been injured by a cultivator whom he had regarded as an ant. He was furious. Besides, Yu Wenqing was one of the 4 strongest cultivators in Blue Sky and White Sunday. Now that Lin Feng had injured her, she was furious. Godly Destruction Fist. Yuan Qing roared angrily and leaped out. His body emitted a destructive power. The destructive strength revolved around Yuan Qing's body. In the end, all the destructive strength condensed in her right fist. Yuan Qing threw a punch at Lin Feng. Regal Sword Grave. Lin Feng could sense how powerful Yuan Qing's Godly Destruction Fist was, so he didn't want to face it head-on. If he was alone, Lin Feng wouldn't have minded fighting Yuan Qing, but he still had Little Moon in his arms. If Yuan Qing got close to Little Moon, he would definitely die if he was hit by Yuan Qing's attack. Regal Sword Control Technique. Slash! 3 precious swords flew out of the Regal Sword Grave and shot towards Yuan Qing. Under Lin Feng's control, the 3 swords looked like 3 dragons bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws as they shot towards Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing threw a punch at the 3 swords. Clang, 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 destructive force coiled around Yuan Qing's hand, and then it collided with the 3 swords. Immediately, the sound of metal colliding rang out. The 3 flying swords couldn't break through Yuan Qing's defense. Little boy, my Godly Destruction Fist is a peerless technique derived from the Great Destruction Technique. It can summon the purest destructive strength in the world and destroy everything in its path. Yuan Qing let out a long howl and threw out another 3 punches. Yuan Qing's 3 punches collided with the 3 swords. The 3 swords were blown thousands of meters away. It wasn't because Lin Feng's Regal Sword Control Technique wasn't strong enough. It was because Yuan Qing's cultivation level was too high. Yuan Qing's Godly Destruction Fist was extremely strong. Therefore, even though Lin Feng had tried his best, he was still completely suppressed. After the 3 swords were blown away, Yuan Qing jumped in the air and appeared in front of Lin Feng. The Godly Destruction Fist swept towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng and Yuan Qing's fists collided. Yuan Qing's punch was too powerful. It sent Lin Feng flying, and a powerful destructive strength poured into Lin Feng's body. The destructive strength exploded. Bang! Half of Lin Feng's body exploded, and blood splashed everywhere. Woo, 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 woo. Big brother, are you in pain? Little Moon saw that Lin Feng was covered in blood and started crying. Big brother, I'm fine. Lin Feng took Little Moon in his arms and retreated, but Yuan Qing had already arrived. She threw another Godly Destruction Fist at Lin Feng. The fist enveloped Lin Feng, and Lin Feng had the feeling that he couldn't dodge. Yuan Qing was too strong, and Lin Feng wasn't strong enough to fight against her. Lin Feng felt powerless in the face of Yuan Qing's attack. Little boy, I'll take your life, Yuan Qing sneered and threw a terrifying punch at Lin Feng's head. If that punch hit Lin Feng, his head would explode. At that time, it would definitely be a situation of death. Bad guy, don't bully Little Moon's big brother. Little Moon stretched out her white hand and slapped Yuan Qing. Suddenly, a terrifying scene appeared. The air was frozen. It was the strength of the earth in ice meridians. Little you suddenly released the strength of the earth in ice meridians. The earth in ice meridians had been suppressed by the celestial meridian's Fire Valley for a long time, but now it was exploding. Not only did the air freeze, but Lin Feng also started shaking. Ice chi penetrated into Lin Feng's body, and he had the impression he was going to freeze. Yuan Qing, who had been throwing a punch at Lin Feng, was frozen in midair by the earth in cold meridian's power. A good opportunity. Lin Feng resisted the cold chi and threw a punch at Yuan Qing. Slash! His fist directly smashed Yuan Qing's head into pieces. Yuan Qing's headless corpse fell into the forest. Little Moon, it's so cold. Is Little Moon going to die? Little Moon couldn't suppress the Earth in cold meridian's power anymore, and her limbs started to freeze. Very quickly, her body was also frozen. Little Moon, I'm so happy to have met Big Brother. Little Moon tried her best to smile. Her slender neck, ears, and face were also frozen. She couldn't suppress the Earth in cold meridian's power anymore, and it was about to take her life. Chapter 1044. What a cold body! What's wrong with little Yu? His body is going to be frozen. Lin Feng looked at little Yu seriously. Little Yu was in a terrible situation. So Lin Feng didn't dare hesitate. He hurriedly released heaven fire to suppress the yin energy in little Yu's body. Ordinary people couldn't withstand heaven fire. Once heaven fire entered their body, they would die. But little Yu's body was too special. His earth-yin cold meridians were enough to resist heaven fire. After heaven fire entered little Yu's body, the yin energy in little Yu's body started to disperse. Little Yu's breathing also became more stable. When Lin Feng saw that, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't dare stay, so he quickly flew away. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. After Lin Feng left, many silhouettes appeared in the distance. Is that Master Yuan? Some of them were from the Supreme Gate of Heaven, and some were from the three governments. When the cultivators from the Supreme Gate of Heaven saw the headless corpse on the ground, they were astonished. Yuan, you died so tragically. Na Lan Tian, Gong Sunbai, and Dong Feng Ri also arrived. When they saw Yuan Qing's corpse, they all looked gloomy. The power of the Earth Frost meridian sealed Elder Yuan's body. That's why he was killed by that kid. The descendant of Emperor Taiching isn't even 5 years old yet. He already knows how to use the power of the Earth Frost meridian. Gong Sun Wushu pulled a long face. Yu Wenqing was a cultivator of the 8th life and death layer, and he had an extraordinary status in the Supreme Gate of Heaven. Now that he had been killed, it was a great loss for the sect. Keep looking. That little boy won't be able to escape, said the masked man in a deep voice. When we catch that little boy, we'll crush his bones and scatter his ashes, shouted Na Lan Tian, Gong Sunbai, and Dong Feng Ri furiously. Swoosh! The three cultivators immediately flew off into the distance. The others quickly dispersed and continued looking for Lin Feng. Only Gong Sun Wushu and the masked man were left behind. What do you think of that matter? The masked cultivator looked at Gong Sun Wushu. Gong Sun Wushu's face fell. Give me some more time, and I'll give you an answer. I hope I won't have to wait too long, the masked cultivator said. Gong Sun Wushu and the masked cultivator also left. Gong Sun Wushu, who was standing in the forest in the distance, looked at the departing figure of the masked cultivator. A sinister expression appeared on his face, but that sinister expression was quickly concealed by him. In a cave, Lin Feng continued suppressing the power of the Earth-yin Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body. Every time it was suppressed, the power of the Earth-yin Frost Meridian would erupt again. Lin Feng had already suppressed Little Moon 10 times. His expression was rather ugly because Little Moon's situation seemed to be worse than he had imagined. Is this a special kind of constitution? Otherwise, how could it have sealed a strong cultivator like Yuan Qing? Lin Feng muttered. If Little Moon hadn't frozen Yuan Qing, he would have already died in her hands. Boom! Suddenly, the power of the Earth-yin Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body exploded again. Each time it exploded, the power of the explosion was even more terrifying than the previous one. Lin Feng's expression became more and more solemn. After suppressing the power of the Earth-yin Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body again, Lin Feng took a deep breath and used his heavenly fire to dissolve the yin Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body. I can't suppress the yin Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body anymore. This is troublesome. Is she really going to? Lin Feng sighed. He looked at little Moon, who was frowning in her sleep. He couldn't help but feel sad. She was such a lovely little girl, and now she was going to die. Lin Feng was depressed. The Earth-Een Frost Meridian is devouring her life force. She won't last more than 10 hours. At that moment, the demon lord's voice sounded. In the space of the demonic orb, Yao Jun sat on a lone grave with a lonely expression. So, little Moon is definitely going to die? Asked Lin Feng in a low voice. There are many things that can't be suppressed just by suppressing them. Sometimes we have to change our methods, said the demon lord. Can't be suppressed? So, you're trying to guide her? Asked Lin Feng. You're pretty smart. You got it so quickly. You understand, said the demon lord indifferently. But how can we guide her? If we don't suppress the Een Frost Meridian in Little Moon's body, it can instantly devour her weak life force. Said Lin Feng. The Earth-Een Frost Meridian is indeed terrifying. This child alone can't resist it. She needs help from others. I remember that in the ancient times, there was a guy called the Earth-Een Saint who had the same constitution as this little girl, but he was different from the others. He actually survived. The demon lord was lost in his memories. How did he survive? Asked Lin Feng anxiously. It's said that a frost pearl condensed in his body. That frost pearl continuously devoured the Een Frost Meridian's power. Through the frost pearl, he could control the Een Frost Meridian's power. Said the demon lord. How do you condense a frost pearl? Asked Lin Feng. There are more than 10 methods, but most of them have been lost for a long time. The success rate isn't high either. I have a method that requires a cultivator who cultivates the great ice technique to help condense a frost pearl in his body, said the demon lord. Lin Feng's expression darkened. The great ice technique is one of the 3,000 great Daos, right? Where can I find such a technique? Even if I search the entire universe, I won't be able to find it. What a coincidence. Back then, I killed the evil Ice Serpent King and obtained the cultivation method of the Great Ice Technique from it. The demon lord smiled. Lin Feng looked delighted. What do I need to get the Great Ice Technique from you? Lin Feng understood the demon lord's personality. It was impossible to ask him for help. He needed to exchange benefits. Swear on your life. Promise me one thing. No matter what I ask of you in the future, you must do it for me, said the demon lord. All right. Lin Feng nodded. He didn't have a choice because Little Moon had less than 10 hours to live. Even though the demon lord's request was excessive, Lin Feng had no choice but to agree. Today, Lin Feng, swear on my life that I will do one thing for the demon lord in the future. No matter what it is, as long as it's from the demon lord, I will not refuse. If I violate this oath, I will die a horrible death. After making the oath, Lin Feng sensed a rune appear in his mind. It faintly connected him to the demon lord. It was the oath rune. If Lin Feng violated the oath in the future, the oath rune would destroy him. His soul would be destroyed, and he would never be able to live again. Chapter 1045. Circulate in the heavenly palace, move to the perineum, pass through the heavenly gate, Shaoyang, Taiyang, Shaoyin, Juk, and other 72 acupuncture points, flow into the 100 rivers, flow into the 9 heavenly veins, and then flow into the divine court veins. Lin Feng sat cross-legged and began to cultivate the great ice art according to the demon lord's teachings. Of course, Lin Feng also knew that it wasn't easy to cultivate the great ice art in a short time. It needed time. However, Lin Feng wanted to familiarize himself with the great ice art and understand how to cultivate it. This way, he could help Little Moon temporarily suppress the power of the Earth-Een Cold Meridian. After 72 circulations, Lin Feng was finally able to cultivate the great ice art skillfully. He placed his hands on Little Moon's body. When the great ice spell was activated, the power of the Earth-Yin cold meridian in Little Moon's body continuously poured into Lin Feng's body. Right now, Lin Feng couldn't help Little Moon condense the cold pearl. Therefore, he could only use this method to temporarily help Little Moon suppress the power of the Earth-Yin cold meridian. Perhaps this was the best way to go about it. As the power of the Earth-Yin cold meridian poured into his body, Lin Feng's body began to freeze. Even his blood was about to be frozen. Fortunately, Lin Feng refined 2 types of heavenly fire. At the moment of danger, Lin Feng's heavenly fire protected his body and counteracted the damage of the Earth-Yin cold meridian. When the power of the Earth-Yin cold meridian in Little Moon's body was completely absorbed by Lin Feng, Little Moon's painful expression disappeared, and her breathing became calm. For a short time, there shouldn't be any big problems with Little Moon. However, at this time, Lin Feng's situation wasn't very good. Although he had the heavenly fire protecting his body was almost frozen by the Earth-Yin cold meridian. If it was someone else, after absorbing so much power of the Earth-Yin cold meridian, their soul would probably have already died. Therefore, it was really not easy for Lin Feng to survive. If you use the Great Ice spell to absorb the Yin meridians, you'll be able to master the Great Ice spell quickly. If you cultivate by yourself, you won't be able to master the Great Ice spell without at least a few years. The Demon Lord reminded. Lin Feng nodded and began to circulate the Great Ice spell. As the Great Frozen Art circulated, Lin Feng's terrifying Earth cold meridian energy was continuously absorbed and refined. As for the Great Frozen Art, it began to condense runes of a formation. These were the runes of the Divine Ability Array. Divine Ability Formation. This was the sign of a successful cultivation. Before the formation was formed, the Divine Ability would automatically condense formation runes. Arrays were formed by the combination of array patterns. When the array pattern reached a certain level, it would condense into a large array. Whoosh! 2 hours later, Lin Feng let out a long breath and opened his eyes, revealing a hint of joy. After absorbing the Yin meridian energy, Lin Feng's Great Ice spell had condensed 1,000 runes. When these runes were combined, Lin Feng could be considered to have reached a small success in the Great Ice spell. Of course, if he wanted to reach a large success in the Great Ice spell, he would need more time. As for reaching a large success in the Great Ice spell, he would need to have a strong comprehension ability. Simply absorbing the Yin meridian energy would not allow him to reach that level. Big brother, is Little Moon still alive? Little Moon opened her eyes and sat up. She was a bit puzzled. Lin Feng hugged Little Moon and said, "With Big Brother here, Little Moon will be fine," said Lin Feng. "That's great. Little Moon is still alive." Little Moon was very excited and kissed Lin Feng on the cheek. Lin Feng took out some food, including spirit fruits, dried meat, and some water. Little Moon was obviously hungry. She ate 2 spirit fruits, a piece of dried meat, and drank some water. After playing for a while, she became sleepy again. She curled up in Lin Feng's arms and quickly fell asleep. Lin Feng also ate some food to recover his strength. The road ahead was going to be even more dangerous. Lin Feng was very clear about that. He looked at Little Moon in his arms and smiled warmly. As long as a person was alive, as long as they had faith, they had nothing to fear. He gently stroked Little Moon's head. Very quickly, Lin Feng also fell asleep. After resting, Lin Feng took Little Moon and continued flying towards the territory of the Great Rocks. No matter how dangerous it was, they had to go to the territory of the Great Rocks. The strong cultivators of the 3 governments were looking for Lin Feng and Little Moon. It was unrealistic to rely on their own strength to leave the South Continent. Only by going to the territory of the great rocks would they be safe. That little boy has been found. Lin Feng and Little Moon were found by the strong cultivators of the three governments. Dozens of strong cultivators surrounded them from all directions. Then, all kinds of powerful attacks were launched towards Lin Feng and Little Moon. Lin Feng had to protect Little Moon, so he couldn't use his full strength. After a fierce battle, Lin Feng killed a group of strong cultivators and quickly left with Little Moon. The closer they got to the territory of the Great Rocks, the more strong cultivators they encountered. Lin Feng was surrounded by a dozen strong cultivators from the three governments. He had already killed 400 to 500 strong cultivators from the three governments. Lin Feng was also injured again and again. There were many places on his body where his bones were exposed. Fortunately, Lin Feng had the immortal body. He could recover quickly after being injured. He also had the green leaf stone, a treasure that could quickly recover his magic power. Otherwise, under the encirclement of the three palaces' experts, he would have died many times over. Big brother, let's take a rest. After a big battle, Lin Feng left with Little Moon in his arms. Little Moon looked at Lin Feng's pale face and felt sorry for him. Lin Feng rubbed Little Moon's head and said, "Big brother, it's all right. We'll reach the territory of the Great Rocks in less than 1,000 miles. We can't stop now." Lin Feng carried Little Moon and flew towards the territory of the Great Rocks in the night. When they were still 300 miles away, they ran into trouble. Thousands of cultivators rushed out of the forest and surrounded Lin Feng and Little Moon. "Little boy, you're like a grasshopper. You've ruined our plan. Even if you die 1,000,000 times, it won't be enough to appease our anger." Gong's Sunbai stepped forward and said coldly. Lin Feng and Gong's Sunbai were old rivals, so he knew how terrifying he was. Now that Gong's Sunbai was there, and he had so many strong cultivators with him, Lin Feng knew that things were getting troublesome. If they could break through, there was still a chance. If they couldn't break through, only death would await them. He took a deep breath and silently took out the revered sword tomb. "Kill!" Murderous shouts spread in the air. Cultivators from all directions were rushing towards Lin Feng like a flood. "Revered sword tomb, open!" Lin Feng shouted, and the revered sword tomb rose into the sky. Crack! The sword box opened. 3 swords flew out and slashed at the thousands of cultivators who were charging at them. Chapter 1046. Pooh! 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 Ripping sounds could be heard as cultivators were killed one by one. However, Lin Feng's body was also covered in wounds, and blood kept flowing out. There were too many opponents. Even though Lin Feng used a defensive treasure like the 7 treasures glazed pagoda to protect his body, there were still some cultivators who could break through his defense and kill him. Moreover, Lin Feng also had to take care of Little Moon, so the situation was not good. This was a war of attrition, and these people kept exhausting Lin Feng. Lin Feng's battle power was naturally getting weaker and weaker. If he lost too much blood, his physical strength would also be consumed very quickly. A cultivator seized an opportunity and came behind Lin Feng, slapping at Lin Feng. Bang! This powerful attack fiercely hit Lin Feng's back and directly sent Lin Feng flying. Lin Feng rolled a few times on the ground. More than 10 cultivators rushed forward, wanting to kill Lin Feng. Great ice art! Lin Feng slapped the ground, and with his palm as the center, ice chi spread out in all directions. The dozen strong cultivators who had rushed towards Lin Feng were instantly frozen. Lin Feng used the sky-splitting slash. Pooh! The cultivators' bodies were directly cut in half, and they died on the spot. An attack like the Great Ice Art was naturally powerful, but this kind of attack could not be used casually. This was because the great ice art consumed too much of one's body, and one's magic power could not support this level of magic power repeatedly. Although Lin Feng had a treasure like the emerald leaf stone, which could quickly recover magic power, with so many cultivators surrounding him, these people would not give him the time to refine the emerald leaf stone at all. This was the reason why many ants could kill an elephant. "Brat, eat my fist." Seeing that Lin Feng had already killed 100 strong warriors, Gong's son Bai finally made his move. He roared coldly and rushed over, sweeping a storm god fist at Lin Feng. Around Gong's son Bai, a strong storm was formed. These storms spun violently, turning into a small tornado that circled around Gong's son Bai's fist. Lin Feng used the 5 Emperor Dragon Fists to block Gong's son Bai's Storm God Fist. As soon as they clashed, the violent power of the storm instantly tore apart Lin Feng's sleeves. Then, a wound appeared on Lin Feng's arm. It was as if he had been cut by a sharp blade. Even his bones were exposed. This storm god's fist was really terrifying. It seemed like it wanted to completely tear Lin Feng's body apart. 8 divine seals. At the critical moment, Lin Feng used the 8 god-forbidding seals to seal the power of the storm. Shatter rivers and mountains. Gong's son Bai attacked again. He raised his left hand and slammed it toward Lin Feng. Poof! This hit directly on Lin Feng's body and sent Lin Feng flying. His left shoulder was pierced, and blood immediately flowed out. His entire shoulder was almost chopped off. Lin Feng was severely injured. He quickly retreated and was about to use his immortal body to heal his injuries. However, the surrounding cultivators had already rushed over. They didn't even give Lin Feng a chance to heal. Clang! Someone wielded a giant axe and smashed the 7 treasures' glazed pagoda. This defensive Tao treasure was sent flying, and the 7 treasures' glazed pagoda's luster dimmed. Although this treasure was powerful, it was only a mid-grade Tao treasure. However, the giant axe in the opponent's hand was a high-grade Tao treasure that could break through the 7 treasures' glazed pagoda's defense. The opponent swung the giant axe and slammed it on the 7 treasures' glazed pagoda again. The defensive system of the 7 treasures' glazed pagoda was completely destroyed, and this treasure entered Lin Feng's body. The expert with the giant axe was from the Tuoba family, one of the 3 prefectures. His name was Tuoba-ji, and he was the son of the Tuoba family's great elder. His position in the family was not to be underestimated, so he had a high-grade Tao treasure. This brat's defensive treasure has been destroyed. Let's kill him together, shouted Tuoba-ji furiously. He raised his gigantic axe and attacked Lin Feng with the strength of a mountain. The surrounding cultivators also rushed over, and all kinds of treasures attacked Lin Feng. Martial spirit, activate! Lin Feng didn't hold back and activated his 5 devouring martial spirits. The 5 devouring martial spirits instantly merged into one, and the power of the confinement magnetic field was pushed to the extreme. With him as the center, a powerful confinement magnetic field formed within 10 meters. Tuoba-ji and more than 20 cultivators from the 1 sect and 3 prefectures were trapped, unable to move. Go to hell! Lin Feng reached out his right hand and grabbed Tuoba-ji's head. Save me! Tuoba-ji shouted in fear. But no one could save him. Lin Feng grabbed Tuoba-ji's head, and with a slight force, he directly plucked Tuoba-ji's head off. Pooh! Fresh blood spurted out from his neck, and Tuoba-ji's headless corpse fell to the ground. At the same time, Lin Feng used the regal sword control art to activate the 3 swords. One by one, the trapped cultivators and the experts from the 1 sect and 3 prefectures were killed. The ground was littered with corpses, and blood flowed like a river. Boom! In the distance, A terrifying aura spread out. Nalon Tian flew over. His expression was indifferent. Brat, do you think you can smoothly reach the land of the fiends? How naive. Then, in another direction, a blazing sun appeared. A cultivator stood in the middle of the sun, and it was Dong Fong Ri. Dong Fong Ri said coldly, "Today, I will kill you by 1,000 cuts, then extract your soul and throw it into purgatory so that you will never be reincarnated." Rumble! An ancient bronze carriage came through the sky, and an ancestor of the Tuoba clan arrived. The ancestor stepped out of the carriage and looked at Lin Feng with sinister eyes. "I really didn't expect you to be so young. You have such an enviable age, talent, and cultivation. You're so young, but you killed so many experts from the one sect and 3 prefectures. It's unbelievable." An ancient powerhouse of the Zhongjin clan also walked over. "This brat has many secrets. If we capture him, the value of these secrets is no less than that of the descendants of Emperor Taiqing." An ancient powerhouse of the Shangguan clan also walked over. "When did someone like you appear among the supreme geniuses? It seems like you didn't participate in the last genius battle. Are you the newest one?" The masked cultivator looked coldly at Lin Feng. "In recent years, there have been a few supreme geniuses who rose to prominence, but I know all of them. The only one I don't know is a cultivator called Lin Feng. Are you the Lin Feng who people call the Little Stone Saint?" Gongsun Wushu's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Let's go." When Lin Feng saw so many peerless cultivators arrive, his expression became grave. He didn't dare stay, and he immediately rushed away. "You can't leave. This place has been sealed. Stay here." Gongsun Wushu, the masked cultivator, the 3 ancient powerhouses of the Tuoba clan, the Zhongjin clan, and the Shangguan clan, as well as Nalon Tian, Gongsun Bai, and Dong Fong Ri, 8 ancient powerhouses attacked together. The attacks of the 8 strong cultivators surrounded Lin Feng. In an instant, Lin Feng was shocked to find that he couldn't move. He sensed a thick death qi enveloping his body. Chapter 1047. Boom! In the distance, a wave of demonic qi swept over. Just as the attacks of the 8 experts were about to land on Lin Feng, the demonic qi surged over and collided with their attacks. The attacks of the 8 powerhouses were broken in an instant. Then, more than a dozen figures descended. There were men and women, old and young, but their strength was unfathomable. They were all led by a woman in snow-white clothes. She looked like a fairy from the 9th heaven, and she was as beautiful as a celestial lotus. Sister Shui Yao. Little Moon's eyes lit up when she saw the woman. She obviously recognized her. "Little Moon, I'm late and scared you. It's all my fault, but from now on, I won't let anyone bully you anymore." The woman called Shui Yao by Little Moon spoke softly. She then stretched out her hands and looked at Lin Feng, saying, "Thank you for escorting Little Moon. Now, hand her over to me." This woman was clearly an expert of the devil race, and her status was definitely not simple. Those unfathomably strong devil race elders were all standing behind her respectfully. Little Moon hugged Lin Feng tightly and buried her head in Lin Feng's chest. Shui Yao smiled bitterly and said, "All right, I won't hug you. Let this big brother hug you instead." Little Moon raised her head and nodded heavily. "You're the princess of the Phoenix race, Shui Yao." The masked man's expression was gloomy. Many people's expressions changed. The Phoenix race was definitely one of the strongest races of the devil race. Since the beginning of time, the Phoenix race had always been the most mysterious race. The divine abilities they possessed were unimaginable. The era before the immemorial era was too long, and there were very few records of that era. After the immemorial era began, The phoenix race had always been one of the 9 great races of the devil race. The most terrifying ability of the phoenix race was phoenix nirvana. It was said that they were unkillable. Even if they were killed, it would only be a temporary death because they could undergo nirvana. Once they returned, they would become even stronger. You're quite observant. Princess Shui Yao looked indifferent. So, what if you're from the phoenix race? Do you think we're afraid of you? Dongfang Ri sneered. An expert who had stepped into the 10th layer of life, and Death Realm naturally had nothing to fear. What's more, there were as many experts as there were clouds in a single clan with 3 manners. They did not fear anyone. Gongsun Wushu said, I've long heard that the Phoenix clan's inheritance is peerless and invincible. Today, I'd like to experience it for myself. As he spoke, Gongsun Wushu raised his right hand. Void, shattering, slash. Crack. The void cracked open as an attack containing the power of destruction was formed. This was an attack condensed from the Void Annihilation Chop. This Void Annihilation Chop had a great origin. It was an offensive technique recorded in the Great Void Technique, one of the 3,000 great Daos. Oblivion of all worlds. When facing Gongsun Wushu's attack, Princess Shui Yao stretched out her slender right hand that was crystalline and translucent like jade. She picked up a flower with her right hand and gently flicked it. An illusory world condensed in the void and swallowed Gongsun Wushu's attack. After that, the void world moved towards Gongsun Wushu to envelop him, as expected of a descendant of the Phoenix clan. You're really powerful. You can actually break through my Void Annihilation Chop. Gongsun Wushu shouted and stepped forward, throwing out 3 punches in succession. Above his fists, a destructive light condensed. After 3 punches, the mysterious world that Princess Shui Yao had condensed shattered. You're not bad either. You were able to block my attack. Let's stop here today. Let's go. Princess Shui Yao waved her sleeves, and her demonic chi rolled out and enveloped everyone. Then the demonic chi soared into the sky and escaped into the distance. There were many experts on the side of the 1 family and 3 prefectures. They had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, so how could they let them leave so easily? Stop them. The experts on the side of the 1 family and 3 prefectures attacked one after another. All kinds of powerful attacks were launched towards the demonic chi. If we want to leave, I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop us. Great banishing technique. Princess Shui Yao was really powerful. Facing the attacks that covered the sky and the earth, she continuously formed seals with both hands and tore open the void. When the long river of attacks came crashing down, all of them were swallowed up by the void that had split open. Then, the demonic chi wrapped around everyone and quickly left. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. We have so many people, but we let a mere dozen of them escape. If this gets out, we'll become the laughingstock of the world. Gongsun Bai said gloomily. The experts of the 1 family and 3 prefectures all had unsightly expressions. No wonder that Princess Shui Yao was so fearless. She learned the great banishing technique. We were tricked by her. What do you plan to do now? Said the masked cultivator gloomily. How's the great Peng Emperor doing? You know? Asked Gongsun Wushu suddenly. He's been injured for hundreds of years. I heard that he obtained a creation fossil and wants to use the creation fossil's luck to suppress his injuries. Said the leader of the Tuoba family. If the great Peng Emperor recovers, it won't be a good thing for us, said the masked cultivator gloomily. Dongfang refrowned and said, It's not that easy to recover from a Dao injury. I've never heard of anyone who was able to survive with a Dao injury. But just in case, We don't mind helping the great Peng Emperor meet his dead ancestors as soon as possible. Since that's what everyone thinks, let's go back and discuss this matter. Since we're going to do it, we have to eliminate the source of the problem," said the leader of the Zheng family. The rest of the people couldn't help but curl their lips into a cold expression. The great Peng Emperor's territory was located in the deepest part of the celestial demon forest. There were countless ferocious beasts there, so it was one of the most dangerous places in the southern continent. Very few cultivators would come here. Everyone stopped outside a valley in the depths of the celestial demon forest. Rumble. At that moment, there was a huge sound. It was obvious that the great Peng Emperor's territory had been activated. The great Peng Emperor's territory was a huge spatial world. It was connected to the Tianwu continent through some restrictions. It was a paradise for the Yao race. Dozens of cultivators flew out under the lead of an old man. "What? Only you came back? Where's Grandma Chu Yun?" asked the old man in the lead. Princess Shui Yao sighed and said, "They're all dead." Little Moon was able to escape alive, thanks to Lin Gongzi. The old man was an elder of the great Peng Emperor's tribe. His name was Jin Shizhen, and most people called him Elder Jin. When he heard this bad news, tears streamed down his face. "I've known Grandma Chu Yun for more than 8,000 years. When I received a message from her, I knew that she was going to bring the little princess to the southern continent. I was very happy, but I didn't expect that my old friend would die so tragically. The southern continent's humans have gone too far in bullying the Yao race." Chapter 1048. Little Moon curled up in Lin Feng's arms and fell asleep. Under Elder Jin's guidance, Lin Feng was led to a courtyard. The land of the monster race was very large. It was a small world with hundreds of millions of people living there. Little Moon's Earth-in cold meridian is temporarily suppressed. I'm currently cultivating the Great Ice technique. Perhaps I can use it to help her condense a cold pearl. That way, she should be fine," said Lin Feng. Everyone was delighted when they heard this. Elder Jin said, "Thank you, little friend. This child has been tortured by the Earth-in cold meridian since she was young. Now that her only relative has died, she's all alone. However, at least she's still alive. She won't let the Tai Qing Emperor's bloodline go extinct." "You're welcome. Little Moon is very cute. I also hope to help her," said Yang Fan. "There's a 10,000-meter cold pond in the monster race's small world. Perhaps it can help you cultivate the Great Ice technique. You can rest for a day. Tomorrow, I'll have someone take you to the cold pond," said Elder Jin. "Thank you, Elder Jin." Lin Feng cupped his fists. Little Moon was carried away by Princess Shui Yao. She was temporarily by Princess Shui Yao's side and was taken care of by her. The Phoenix clan and the Tai Qing Emperor's clan had always been very close, so Lin Feng wasn't worried. Equals when little Peng King Jin Shengyuan heard the news. He quickly rushed over. When he saw Lin Feng, he was extremely excited and gave Lin Feng a bear hug. "Brother Feng, I didn't think you'd come to Nanzhou. When I heard the name Lin Feng, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was just someone with the same name, so I quickly came to see. I didn't think it would really be you, Brother Feng." Jin Shengyuan was very excited. Lin Feng patted Jin Shengyuan's shoulder and said, "Life is unpredictable. I didn't think I'd come to Nanzhou either. Also, many things have happened during this time." After a pause, Lin Feng said, "Let's talk inside." Jin Shengyuan nodded and entered the living room with Lin Feng. The two of them talked about the various things that had happened in the past 2 years, and both of them were quite emotional. "How is Senior Great Rock King now?" Lin Feng asked. "Uncle, you're in the hidden gate of life and death. It's very important to you," Jin Shengyuan said. Lin Feng nodded. The great Rock King was injured in the first place. His hidden latch of life and death was indeed too important. The slightest carelessness could lead to his death. Originally, Lin Feng wanted to pay a visit to the great Rock King, but now he could only give up. Tomorrow, I want to go to the frigid pond. Bring me there. Lin Feng said. Jin Shenyuan nodded. He didn't stay too long with Lin Feng and quickly left. Not long after, Little Moon woke up and cried for Lin Feng. Princess Shui Yao could only carry Little Moon to Lin Feng. What's wrong, my little moon? Why are you crying? Lin Feng rubbed Little Moon's head lovingly. Little Moon said, Little Moon wants to stay by Big Brother's side. Little Moon doesn't want to leave Big Brother's side. Lin Feng hugged Little Moon and smiled. All right, Big Brother will stay with Little Moon. After playing around for a while, Little Moon grew tired. She ate some food and fell asleep. Because she had been tortured by the Yin Meridian for a long time, Little Moon's body was very weak, so she was very sleepy. She only woke up for a short while. The next day, Lin Feng followed Jin Xingyuan to the frigid pond. The frigid pond was located in the northwest of the small world, deep in an ancient forest. It was about 1 mu in size, and the surrounding 15 kilometers was filled with cold qi. Ordinary people couldn't even get close to the frigid pond. This frigid pond is too cold. Many years ago, a senior explored it and dived 30,000 meters, but he still couldn't reach the bottom. In the end, he came back. But after so many years, nothing strange has happened here. On the contrary, many people who practice ice-type techniques like to come here to cultivate, said the great Rock King. Little Rock King said. Lin Feng nodded. Along the way, he did see cultivators coming to the area where the frigid pond was. They probably wanted to use the power of the frigid pond to train their techniques. You can go back. I can go in by myself. Lin Feng said. All right, I'll go back first. Jin Shenyuan then left. Lin Feng came to the side of the frigid pond to cultivate. Many demon cultivators pointed at him. This was because very few human cultivators came to the demon race's territory. However, they had vaguely heard that Lin Feng had escorted the descendants of Emperor Taiching to the demon race's territory. So these demon cultivators didn't show any hostility. They all had friendly expressions. Most people didn't enter the frigid pond to cultivate because the cold qi outside the frigid pond was cold enough to cultivate ordinary ice-type techniques. If one were to enter the cold pond, it would not be easy for one's body to resist the cold energy of the cold pond. In the end, it was very likely that not only would one's cultivation not increase, but one's body would also be injured. Lin Feng entered the frigid pond and dived down. The Yin energy above didn't increase his cultivation by much. When he reached 3,000 meters, Lin Feng started channeling the great ice art. The Yin energy poured into Lin Feng's body and turned into runes. Lin Feng didn't know how long he had been practicing cultivation, but he was already 60,000 meters below the surface of the lake. If Lin Feng hadn't practiced the great ice technique, he wouldn't have been able to go that deep because it was too cold. Even the cultivators of the ancient giants would be frozen to death if they dived to this position. However, the great ice art could disperse the coldness. Thus, the Yin energy here couldn't harm Lin Feng. Lin Feng finally reached the grand completion stage of the great ice art. This stage could help Lil Moon condense the frigid pearl. Lin Feng planned to leave, but a weak ripple attracted Lin Feng's attention. What's at the bottom of the frigid pond? Lin Feng frowned. Before, the strong cultivator from the Beast clan had come back after reaching 30,000 meters. Lin Feng had already reached 60,000 meters, and he still hadn't reached the bottom. Lin Feng was guessing that there were some secrets hidden at the bottom of the lake. Let's go down and take a look. Lin Feng continued down. What surprised Lin Feng was that after 100,000 meters, he finally reached the bottom of the lake. There were cobblestones everywhere. It was a gigantic area. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black silhouette flashed behind Lin Feng. When Lin Feng turned around, he didn't see anything. Lin Feng frowned. He suppressed the throbbing in his heart and swam deeper. That's... Lin Feng's eyes widened. Chapter 1049. At the bottom of the lake was a 1,000-meter-long skeleton. Its entire body was snow-white and sparkling. Upon closer inspection, the skeleton looked like a crystal. Dragon? It's actually a dragon's skeleton. No wonder Lin Feng was so shocked. He quickly swam over and landed in front of the skeleton, carefully inspecting it. Based on the shape of the skeleton, could it be an ice dragon? No wonder the lake is so cold. It's because of this ice dragon's skeleton. With such a huge body, it must have been a god when it was alive, right? Lin Feng's expression became serious. A god-level ice dragon had actually died here. It was very strange, and Lin Feng was filled with doubts. What had happened? Was this how the ice dragon had died? I wonder when this land of the beasts was built. It seems that even the beasts didn't know that an ice dragon was buried at the bottom of the lake. Lin Feng couldn't help but stroke his chin. Right, a precious bone. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Many powerful beasts had precious bones. Precious bones were bones that had been branded with a divine ability. Because of that, they were treated differently and were named treasures. Obviously, a powerful beast like the ice dragon definitely had a precious bone. If one could obtain an ice dragon's precious bone, they would be able to obtain the divine ability recorded on it. Generally, divine abilities that could be branded on precious bones were top-notch divine abilities passed down from generation to generation. Therefore, they were very valuable. Lin Feng searched for a precious bone on the huge skeleton. Found it. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A piece of bone was engraved with numerous runes. Those runes emitted shocking fluctuations that made Lin Feng's heart palpitate. The ice dragon was a royal dragon, and the divine abilities it had passed down were at least primordial divine abilities. Lin Feng took the precious bone and put it in his storage ring. He continued walking deeper into the lake. At that moment, Lin Feng suddenly sensed a cold aura surging towards him. Almost reflexively, he turned around and slammed his palm behind him. A black shadow enveloped him. Then a huge suction force surged towards him. Lin Feng felt his attack land on a soft body. His attack was completely negated. A moment later, Lin Feng was sucked in by a huge plate, and he couldn't move at all. The terrifying plate wriggled, trying to swallow Lin Feng whole. What kind of monster is this? Lin Feng's expression suddenly changed. In that moment of life and death crisis, he summoned the regal sword mound, and 3 swords flew out. Slash, slash, slash. The 3 swords pierced the monster's body. Bang! The gigantic monster crashed to the ground. Lin Feng took a deep breath and looked at the monster. When he saw it, his expression changed. It was a gigantic demon leech that was 4 or 5 meters long. Lin Feng had never seen such a huge monster. After the demonic leech was killed, black blood flowed out of its body. The leech itself is a type of medicinal ingredient. Such a huge demonic leech is too valuable. Lin Feng put the demonic leech away. He continued walking deeper into the lake, but he was much more careful this time. Before long, Lin Feng saw a huge abyss. From time to time, shocking waves of energy would surge out. Lin Feng looked into the abyss. He could faintly see a ball of divine light in the abyss. The ball of divine light seemed to contain a supreme treasure. Even though the treasure was dormant, Lin Feng still felt his soul tremble when he sensed its aura. What kind of treasure is that? A divine weapon or an imperial weapon? Lin Feng's face was filled with shock. The item wrapped in the divine light was definitely extraordinary. He had sensed a similar aura from the imperial weapon, the Sword of Time. Therefore, Lin Feng concluded that the treasure inside the divine light was very likely an imperial weapon. Even if it wasn't an imperial weapon, it was still a top-tier divine weapon that was very close to one. Lin Feng carefully dove deeper into the abyss, but after diving for about 100 meters, he suddenly sensed a terrifying aura coming from the bottom of the abyss. Next, countless black leeches swam up. The leeches at the bottom of the abyss were too huge. Even the smallest one was over 10 meters long, like a huge python. Moreover, there were so many of them that it was impossible to tell how many there were. "Oh no, I have to leave." Lin Feng's face was filled with shock when he saw the demonic leeches rushing out of the abyss. It had already been extremely difficult for him to kill the 4 to 5 meter long demonic leech, let alone the countless huge ones below. If those demonic leeches caught up to him, he would definitely die. After rushing out of the abyss, he swam upwards. The demonic leeches chased him for a while before returning to the abyss. Are these demonic leeches guarding the mysterious treasure in the abyss? I wonder who left it behind. Could the death of the ice dragon in the abyss have something to do with the demonic leeches? Lin Feng frowned. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. With such a huge group of demonic leeches, there would definitely be a king-level demonic leech. A king-level demonic leech might really be able to kill a god. Lin Feng finally swam upwards. With his current strength, he didn't have the ability to touch the mysterious treasure in the abyss. He would have to wait until he became a god before he could try. Lin Feng returned to his residence. When Little Moon saw Lin Feng, she immediately became happy. She stretched out her little hand and ran towards Lin Feng. "Big brother, where did you go? I thought you didn't want me anymore," Little Moon said pitifully. Lin Feng took Little Moon in his arms and caressed her head. He smiled and said, "How could Big Brother abandon Little Moon?" When Little Moon heard Lin Feng's words, she was extremely happy. Her big, bright eyes narrowed into crescents. "It seems that you've already mastered the great ice art," exclaimed Princess Shui Yao. Lin Feng nodded. "That's right. I've already mastered the great ice art. It's better to condense the frost pearl for Little Moon as soon as possible. So, we'll start tomorrow." Princess Shui Yao nodded. "All right, but you have to tell Elder Jean about this." Lin Feng nodded. That night, Elder Jean came to Lin Feng's residence and asked, "Young friend, what's the probability of condensing the frost pearl?" "About 50%, said Lin Feng. Said Elder Jean sorrowfully. "You have to succeed. Sovereign Taiching only has one descendant. If Little Moon dies, Sovereign Taiching's line will be cut off. Back then, Sovereign Taiching died at the peak of the Martial Heaven continent. If his line is cut off, how can we face the late Sovereign Taiching? Don't worry. Nothing will happen to Little Moon." Lin Feng nodded. His words sounded more like he was trying to cheer himself up. Little Moon was such a cute and sensible child. If she really died tragically before she was 5 years old, how painful would that be? The next day, everything was ready. Lin Feng and Little Moon entered the room while Princess Shui Yao, Elder Jean, Jean Shengyuan, and the others waited outside anxiously. Chapter 1050. Little Moon was very obedient. She sat in front of Lin Feng and looked at Lin Feng with her big, watery eyes. "Don't be afraid. If it hurts, just scream. With Big Brother here, Little Moon will be fine," Lin Feng said softly. Little Moon had always been a very strong child. After hearing Lin Feng's words, she said, "Little Moon, don't be afraid. With Big Brother here, Little Moon knows that I will definitely get better. Her big, watery eyes curved into crescents again. She looked very cute. This was a child that made one's heart ache and pity. She was so young, but she was already so sensible. Lin Feng pinched Little Moon's face lovingly. Then he took a deep breath and began to circulate the great ice spell. He placed his right hand on Little Moon's back and his left hand on her dantian. When the power of the great ice spell entered Little Moon's body, the power of the earth-en cold meridian in her body instantly exploded. The terrifying power of the earth-en cold meridian began to freeze Little Moon's body. Little Moon was so cold that she shivered. However, she bit her lips and didn't let herself make a sound. Little Moon was too sensible. She was afraid that Lin Feng would be worried, so she forced herself to endure it. Lin Feng hurriedly guided the power of the earth-en cold meridian in Little Moon's body to gather at her dantian. Originally, the power of the earth-en cold meridian was like a flood that couldn't be controlled. But now, the power of the earth-en cold meridian was quickly gathering at Little Moon's dantian under Lin Feng's guidance. The power of the earth-en cold meridian gathered together and turned into the shape of an energy ball. Then, Lin Feng merged the energy produced by the great ice spell into the energy ball. The energy ball was continuously compressed. Gradually, the energy ball was compressed from a gaseous state to a liquid state, and the power of the earth-en cold meridian in its liquid state began to condense. After an unknown amount of time, the power of the earth-en cold meridian in its liquid state began to gradually transform into a crystal clear bead. This bead was the frost bead. Sensing that the frost bead had successfully formed, Lin Feng revealed a look of joy. He carefully probed and discovered that Little Moon's body was still constantly producing the power of the earth-en frost vein. The power of the earth-en frost meridian eventually gathered towards the frost pearl and was absorbed by it. As expected, the frigid pearl can control the en meridians. Little Yu Yang is fine now. Lin Feng let out a long breath. He was about to withdraw his spiritual force from Little Moon's dantian. Suddenly, Lin Feng realized that there was something wrong. In the depths of Little Moon's dantian, there seemed to be an aura so strong that it made his soul tremble. What is hidden in Little Moon's dantian? Lin Feng was puzzled. His spiritual will carefully flew towards the depths of Little Moon's dantian. Little Moon's dantian was too big, like an ocean. His dantian was like a sea. Lin Feng was astonished. Little Moon hadn't started cultivating yet, so his dantian should have been very small. However, Little Moon's dantian was even bigger than his. If his dantian was as big as an ocean, how big would his dantian become in the future? How much magic power would his dantian contain? Just thinking about it made people feel a sense of shock. Finally, Lin Feng's spiritual will reached the depths of Little Moon's dantian. There, Lin Feng saw a shocking scene. A holy fetus was sitting cross-legged, surrounded by holy light. It was pure and holy, and it emitted shocking fluctuations. A holy imperial fetus. The demon lord's voice sounded. It was filled with astonishment. Obviously, the demon lord was astonished when he saw the holy fetus. A holy imperial fetus? What's a holy imperial fetus? Asked Lin Feng. Little Moon hadn't started cultivating, but there was a holy fetus hidden in her dantian. It was too strange. Moreover, this holy fetus seemed to have a great origin. It was very likely not Little Moon's own holy fetus. It was a holy fetus that had been placed in her dantian. Emperor Taiching's holy fetus, said the demon lord in disbelief. Hiss! Lin Feng couldn't help but gasp. How shocking was the holy fetus of a grand emperor? Logically speaking, the Taiching emperor's sacred fetus should have been destroyed along with his death. But now his holy fetus had been preserved. It was unknown what method Emperor Taiching had used to preserve his holy fetus and pass it down from generation to generation. This time, it was Little Moon's holy fetus. The holy fetus is dormant because Little Moon hasn't started cultivating. Once she starts cultivating, she'll be able to communicate with the holy fetus and gradually refine its power, said the demon lord. Refine a grand emperor's holy fetus? If I succeed in refining it, how strong will Little Moon become? Asked Lin Feng, said the demon lord. A conservative estimate is that she'll have 30% of Emperor Taiching's power at his peak. Lin Feng's expression changed. Emperor Taiching was a peerless great emperor. Even 30% of his combat prowess would be enough to slay an ancient giant god. Of course, if you can break through to the Di Qi layer and refine great Emperor Taiching's holy embryo, then you'll be unimaginable, continued the demon lord. Lin Feng nodded. Such a great imperial beast's holy embryo is a treasure trove. It seems that you're interested in the holy fetus, said the demon lord. If I can refine the holy fetus's blood essence, my cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds, said Lin Feng. That's suicidal. The imperial beast's holy embryo is sleeping, but if you dare take its blood essence, you'll probably wake it up, and your soul will be destroyed in an instant, said the demon lord. Wealth comes from danger. I'm going to try. Lin Feng gritted his teeth. His divine will instantly flew out and entered the sacred fetus body. It wrapped around a drop of the sacred fetus origin blood and quickly retreated. Success. Lin Feng was pleasantly surprised. But at this time, the sleeping shifter emperor, holy embryo suddenly opened its eyes. Screech. The holy fetus let out a piercing shriek. Wah! Lin Feng coughed up a mouthful of blood. The holy fetus's cold eyes glanced at Lin Feng. Crack, crack. Lin Feng's body began to crumble. It's over. I'm dead. Lin Feng's face paled. It was a moment of life and death. Lin Feng's 5 devouring martial spirits suddenly revolved and merged into one. Then, a blurry silhouette appeared in the black hole. Oh my God, it's him! Just as I guessed, the blood of that heaven-defying race is flowing in his veins. But I didn't expect that there would be a mark of that race in his veins. That's terrifying, said the demon lord when he saw the blurry silhouette in the black hole. He was shaking with fear. Chapter 1051. His silhouette was blurry, making people think that he was an illusion, but at the same time, he was standing in the black hole, looking around. He stepped forward. At that moment, time and space seemed to stop. Bang! Next, the holy embryo's attack disappeared. Holy light rushed out of the holy fetus of the demon emperor, wrapping itself in layers, as if it was guarding against the blurry shadow. The holy embryo was afraid. This was too shocking. The holy embryo was so strong, but it was afraid of a blurry silhouette. Lin Feng's godly awareness wrapped around the imperial beast's holy embryo's blood, and it went back into his body. He finally looked relieved. It had been too dangerous. Who is this? Lin Feng sensed the blurry silhouette. It seemed to be looking at him, but it quickly disappeared. Everything calmed down again, but Lin Feng's heart was pounding. He couldn't calm down for a long time. Demon Lord. I think I can guess his identity. Lin Feng took a deep breath. The demon lord said, Since you've guessed it, it's fine as long as you know it. This race, what kind of race is it? Their bloodline brand is so strong. Lin Feng asked. Bloodline brands were a kind of inheritance of many powerful races. Sometimes, when the descendants of a race were in danger, there was a small chance that the bloodline brand would be activated and save them. This was what Lin Feng had encountered. The probability of the bloodline brand being activated was usually less than 1%, so it depended on luck. Lin Feng's luck was very good. I can't describe that race. Even though I've met them before, I don't know their origin, so there are many things I can't tell you. Perhaps as your cultivation gradually increases, you'll be able to uncover their secrets. Didn't you say that your mother was suppressed by the nine heavens god-bearing coffin in the depths of the starry sky world? Since you saved your mother, perhaps you can learn something about that race from her. The demon lord said. Lin Feng did not ask any more questions. Perhaps it was just as the demon lord had said, and he knew nothing about that race. However, it was also possible that the demon lord did not want to tell Lin Feng what he knew. No matter what the reason was, Lin Feng could not get the answer he wanted from the demon lord. Since that was the case, he might as well not ask about these things. Little Moon fell asleep, and Lin Feng covered her with the blanket. Then he walked out of the room. How is Little Moon? Princess Shui Yao, Elder Jean, and the others asked anxiously. I've already condensed the frost pearl. I'm fine now, Lin Feng said. That's great. Even if we die in the future, we'll be able to face Great Emperor Tai Ching. Elder Jean sighed. Perhaps he thought of Granny Chu Yun, who had died tragically, and his expression was very sad. Lin Feng said, There's something else that I need to talk to you about alone. Many people stayed outside. Lin Feng, Princess Shui Yao, Elder Jean, and Jean Xingyuan went to a guest room. Is Little Moon's body not in a good condition? Jean Xingyuan asked worriedly. He liked Little Moon very much, and their race had a very close relationship with Great Emperor Tai Ching. She's doing very well, but Great Emperor Tai Ching's Saint Fetus is sealed in the depths of Little Moon's dantian. Lin Feng said. Apart from Jean Xingyuan, Princess Shui Yao and Elder Jean looked very calm. Lin Feng smiled wryly. It seems that the two of you already know. Princess Shui Yao said, We do know about this. Great Emperor Tai Ching's Saint Fetus is passed down from generation to generation. It can only be fused into the dantian of his descendants. Once his descendants die out, the Saint Fetus will also die. Lin Feng nodded. After chatting with them for a while, he left and returned to his room. He set up a restriction to protect his room and then went into seclusion. That was because he had obtained a drop of origin blood. This drop of origin blood was too precious, and Lin Feng wanted to quickly refine it to increase his cultivation. Little Moon is fine. Grandma Chu Yun and the others can rest in peace. Jean Xingyuan sighed with a lonely expression. When Jean Xingyuan was young, he had lived with Grandma Chu Yun for a period of time. Her death had made him very sad. My devil race has to take revenge for Grandma Chu Yun. Elder Jean clenched his teeth. Princess Shui Yao said, The southern continent's humans have gone too far this time. If my devil race continues to tolerate them, there will be no place for my devil race in the Tianwu continent in the future. Lin Feng didn't know about Princess Shui Yao and Elder Jin's plan. The southern continent's one sect and 3 palaces had indeed gone too far. The one sect and 3 palaces were now at odds with Lin Feng. These 4 forces were unscrupulous and heartless for the sake of benefits. Lin Feng didn't have the slightest good impression of them. Of course, Lin Feng's energy was currently focused on refining the origin blood of the Demon Emperor's sacred embryo. He began to refine the drop of origin blood. Lin Feng was too powerful, so it was very difficult for him to break through. However, Lin Feng felt that this drop of origin blood might be able to help him break through. Under the refinement of the immemorial dragonesque elephant art, the origin blood gradually turned into pure energy that fused into Lin Feng's body and was gradually devoured by Lin Feng. Waves of energy that were as vast as the sea of smoke flowed through his limbs and bones. In the end, All the energy turned into the purest form of magic power. The magic power was like a sea. When it circulated, it produced a rumbling sound. It was as if the sea was surging into the sky, shaking all directions. After circulating 36 cycles in his body, all the magic power gathered together. Lin Feng began to break through to the 5th layer of the creation realm. The long river of magic power surged in Lin Feng's meridians. Again and again, it attacked Lin Feng's realm barrier. Lin Feng was only at the 4th layer of the creation realm, but he could already defeat experts at the 3rd or 4th layer of the life and death realm. It could be seen how terrifying his accumulation was. Every time he broke through, Lin Feng's strength would increase by leaps and bounds. However, every breakthrough was extremely difficult. Fortunately, the Demon Emperor's sacred embryo's origin blood was powerful enough this time. Lin Feng refined a portion of the divine origin, a portion of the primordial demon liquid, and a portion of the galaxy divine liquid. They increased his undying bloodline, magic power, and soul respectively. Lin Feng's undying bloodline purity had reached 22%. This made Lin Feng very happy. Although the undying bloodline's improvement was very slow, it was still improving. As for Lin Feng's soul power, it had reached the 2nd layer of the life and death realm. Lin Feng's own magic power was becoming purer and purer. Although Lin Feng was only at the 4th heavenly layer of the fortune realm, he felt that the purity of his magic power was even purer than that of cultivators at the 4th or 5th heavenly layer of the life and death realm. Asterisk boom. Asterisk finally, the long river of magic power in Lin Feng's body seemed to have broken through the barrier. The torrential river swept through heaven and earth, and an even more majestic magic power surged out. I've finally broken through to the 5th layer of the creation realm. Lin Feng circulated his magic power, and all the magic power gathered in his dantian. In his dantian, golden light soared into the sky and gathered into a vast ocean. This was a sea of magic power, and one couldn't see the end of it. Chapter 1052. The sun was shining brightly. Lin Feng was lying on a grassy plain. Not far away, Little Moon was chasing after Bibi and Little White as they ran happily. "Little Bunny, don't run!" "Bibi, don't run!" Little Moon shouted as it chased after them, its voice full of innocence. When they were finally tired from running, Bibi and Little White returned to Lin Feng's side. Little Moon also lay in Lin Feng's arms to rest. Bibi waved its little paw, and a spirit fruit appeared in its hand. It grabbed the spirit fruit and began to chew on it. She stared at the Little Moon with her big black eyes. A dragon rabbit and an unknown little beast. Princess Shueyao was shocked. Dragon rabbits were very rare, and this was her first time seeing one. As for Bibi's race, she didn't know. Princess Shueyao looked at Elder Jean and asked, "Elder, do you know the origin of that little beast? I've never heard of such a race. However, the world is so big, so nobody knows how many races there are," Elder Jean said. Princess Shueyao nodded. Princess Shueyao nodded, but her beautiful eyes continued to stare at Bei, revealing a thoughtful expression. At night, Lin Feng was comprehending the contents of the ice dragon bone. He imprinted all the runes on it and deciphered the information contained within. Lin Feng obtained a divine ability called Icebound Worlds. This was one of the strongest divine abilities of the ice dragon race. The inheritance of the dragon race is naturally no small matter. This Icebound Worlds is probably even more powerful than many primordial divine abilities. Lin Feng smiled. Every primordial divine ability, one of the 3,000 great daos or emperor techniques, could greatly increase one's cultivation. A divine ability of this level was enough to establish an ancient sect. Lin Feng basically didn't want to cultivate divine abilities below the primordial divine ability level. If he wanted to cultivate, he would cultivate the strongest divine abilities. Because Lin Feng cultivated the Great Ice technique, he had a deeper understanding of the Tao of Ice. Thus, it was much easier for him to cultivate the icebound worlds. This was the 3,000 Great Taos. Each of the 3,000 Great Taos was the ultimate evolution of a certain Tao, as long as he successfully cultivated the 3,000 Great Taos. In that case, he would soon be able to grasp the subtleties of the various divine abilities contained in this great Tao. For example, Lin Feng had already mastered the Great Death technique. Then, if Lin Feng also obtained Death Qi, such as the Death Fist, the Death Battle Song, and so on, he would be able to master them quickly. The Tao of Frost was the same. The Ice Seal All Worlds was a Tao of Frost. Lin Feng, who had mastered the Great Ice Art, was naturally able to cultivate it with twice the result with half the effort. In just 3 days, Lin Feng had already cultivated the Ice Seal All Worlds, a great divine ability of the Dragon Clan, to the realm of great success. Brother Feng, it would be a pity if you didn't go to the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground. I already told Elder Jean about it, and he agreed to open the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground for you to cultivate, said Lin Feng. Jin Xingyuan came to Lin Feng and said, "The Sacred Ancestors' Place of Enlightenment, what kind of place is that?" Lin Feng was puzzled. However, based on the name, it should be an extraordinary place. Jin Xingyuan smiled and said, "Brother Feng, do you know the origins of our clan? I'd like to hear the details." Lin Feng asked. Jin Xingyuan said, "Brother Feng, you must have heard of the story of the peacock swallowing the Buddha Lord. Afterward, the Buddha Lord broke free from the body of the peacock and gave the peacock the title of Mahamayuri Bodhisattva, right?" Lin Feng nodded. "Yes, I've heard of it. The peacock had a younger brother who was called the Golden-Winged Great Rock King. The Golden-Winged Great Rock King was the ancestor of our clan." Jin Xingyuan said. Lin Feng couldn't help but gasp. Jin Xingyuan's clan had a great origin. The Great Rock Clan naturally had many branches, but the most respected was Jin Xingyuan's clan. Their ancestor was too powerful. The Golden-Winged Great Rock King was one of the strongest great emperors of the Yao clan. Lin Feng's heart shook. "I've heard that the Great Rock King and the Great Rock King were known as the two peerless geniuses of the Yao clan. Could the Great Rock King be the descendant of the Mahamayuri Bodhisattva?" "Yes." Jin Xingyuan nodded. Lin Feng said, "I never thought that so many myths and legends would be true." Jin Xingyuan said, "Many myths and legends aren't groundless. They have a basis. Of course, there are also many myths and legends that have been fabricated by others. It's hard to tell which is true and which is false." "That's true, because there are so many fake stories. A lot of real things are treated as stories," said Lin Feng. Lin Feng sighed. The next day, Lin Feng followed Jin Xingyuan to the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground. The Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground was the holy land of the Great Rocks. It wasn't located in the Yao clan's territory. Instead, it was connected to the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground through a space-time teleportation array. They entered the teleportation array and were transported to the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground. Lin Feng followed Jin Xingyuan to a valley. There was a small teleportation array there. It was the teleportation array to the Sacred Ancestors' Enlightenment Ground. Many bestial beasts have arrived, and some of their elders have come as well. Maybe some people will go to the Holy Ancestors' Enlightenment Land, but Brother Feng, don't pay attention to them. Just focus on your own cultivation." Lin Feng nodded. He had vaguely heard that Princess Shui Yao and Elder Jean wanted to avenge Grandmother Chu Yun and the others. It seemed that many Yao clan members would respond. Jean Xingyuan's expression darkened. Some people have come with ulterior motives. They're extremely hateful. However, due to the relationship between the various Yao clans, it's inconvenient to say anything. What ulterior motives? Lin Feng asked. The Yao clan's holy embryo in the little princess's body. Some people are eyeing the holy embryo's origin blood. Jin Shenyuan smiled icily. Lin Feng frowned slightly. It seemed that many beasts who had come to the territory of the Great Rock King clan had ulterior motives. Naturally, some people really wanted to avenge Grandmother Chu Yun and the others, but most of them, as Jin Shenyuan had said, wanted the original blood of the imperial beast holy embryo. After Jin Shenyuan left, Lin Feng entered a teleportation portal. Lights flashed, and a moment later, he appeared in a gigantic cave. This cave was very large, about 100 acres in size. On the rock walls, there were many murals. These murals were very complete. There were murals of the demon race's cultivation, but there were more murals of Buddhism. Could it be that the great golden-winged rock king created those murals? I've heard that he spent a lot of time in the Buddhist world. It seems that he has a deep understanding of Buddhism. Lin Feng scratched his chin thoughtfully. He found a place to practice cultivation and took out a 9-colored stone. Holding the 9-colored stone, Lin Feng quickly entered a meditative state. 3 days later, more than 10 Yao clan members entered the Holy Ancestors' enlightenment ground. When they saw Lin Feng sitting cross-legged and practicing cultivation, they didn't pay attention to him. As they were about to leave, one of the Yao clan's young geniuses pointed at the 9-colored stone in Lin Feng's hand. He was astonished. That little boy is holding a 9-colored stone. Oh, my God, such a treasure really exists. Many young geniuses of the Beast clan looked at the golden stone in Lin Feng's hand and looked at it greedily. Chapter 1053. Brat, wake up! A supreme talent stepped out and bellowed in a deep voice. Lin Feng, who had been cultivating, was startled awake. When he saw these people, his face sank. You disturbed my cultivation? Kneel on the ground and apologize. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. He was a strong person to begin with. Moreover, his strength had already surpassed many ancient giants. A mere junior from the demon race dared to disturb his cultivation if it weren't for the fact that he had to give the great Peng King some face. This person would have died long ago. The young genius from the demon race thought that he had misheard. He looked at Lin Feng in disbelief and said coldly, Brat, do you know what you're saying? Said Lin Feng. You're acting recklessly. Do you want to show off your status in front of me? Unfortunately, you're showing off to the wrong person. I won't fall for it. Lin Feng took a step forward and arrived in front of the young genius in an instant, slapping him with his palm. You're courting death, shouted the young genius furiously. He raised his right hand and threw a punch at Lin Feng. Bang! The two sides collided, and the young genius felt as if he had been struck by lightning. With a crack, his arm broke. His legs went soft, and he fell to his knees. Ah, my arm! How dare you break my arm? How dare you make me kneel on the ground? You know who I am? The young demon race prodigy roared furiously. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as he kicked the young genius dozens of meters away. Pooh! In midair, the young genius spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Unconscious, you're finally a little more awake. Lin Feng said indifferently, Brat, aren't you a little too ruthless? Another genius from the demon race said gloomily, You disturb my cultivation, and you dare say that I'm ruthless? Who do you think you are? How dare you spout nonsense here? Lin Feng put his hands behind his back and looked at the other party with an indifferent expression. I am the young master of the Southern Sea's Blood Eagle Island, Lu Chang. How dare you treat me so rudely? Have you thought of the consequences? Blood Eagle Island? What kind of power was this? He had never heard of it before. It should be an unranked force, right? You have the nerve to bring out a mediocre faction? How shameless! Don't you feel ashamed? Lin Feng curled his lips and said with disdain, Brat, you dare to humiliate me like this? Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Lu Chang's face darkened. Demonic chi surged, and he was about to attack. Brother Lu, wait. Suddenly, a young cultivator in blue clothes said in a deep voice. This person clearly had some prestige, so when he spoke, the cultivator called Lu Chang stopped. Brother Xie, why are you stopping me? Lu Chang asked. The cultivator had a slender figure and was very handsome, but his long and narrow eyes made him look gloomy. He was called Xie Wuyu, and his race was not simple. He was a three-headed cobra. Cobras were the most poisonous snake race. They hid in the dark and attacked their enemies with fatal attacks. The three-headed cobras were the royal cobra race, and they had long since become part of the devil race. Naturally, this race had the characteristics of a cobra. They were tolerant, bloodthirsty, cold, and merciless. Among the devil race, the three-headed cobra race could be said to be one of the top devil races. Even the human race would not easily offend this terrifying race. Xie Wuyu was from the three-headed cobra race, so he had some prestige among the younger generation. Since you're a guest of the great Peng King clan, you should restrain yourself. Lu Chang frowned slightly, but he did not refute. Xie Wuyu looked at Lin Feng, bowed hand over fist, and said, My friend didn't understand anything and disturbed your cultivation. I apologize on his behalf, said Xie Wuyu, bowing hand over fist. Lin Feng said indifferently, There's no need to apologize. That guy has already received his due punishment. Xie Wuyu asked with a fake smile, Brother, is that a 9-colored illusory stone in your hand? Lin Feng nodded and said, That's right. It is indeed a 9-colored illusory stone. I plan to use a treasure to exchange for it. What do you think? Xie Wuyu said with a smile. We'll have to see what kind of treasure you can take out. Lin Feng said indifferently. He still had 31 9-colored illusory stones, so he did not mind taking out a few to trade. Brother, I'll naturally be satisfied with what I can take out. As soon as he finished speaking, Xie Wuyu's hand flashed, and he took out a purple crystal. Purple cloud crystal. It can be used to forge high-grade Dao treasures. I'll trade it for your 9-colored illusory stone. Xie Wuyu said, It's just a purple cloud crystal. It's worth at most 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. If I auction this 9-colored illusory stone, it can be sold for at least 50 million top-grade spirit stones. Do you think it's possible to trade something worth 50 million top-grade spirit stones for something worth 50 million top-grade spirit stones? Lin Feng looked indifferent. When he saw what Xie Wuyu had taken out, he knew that Xie Wuyu was not being sincere. The thing is not important. Give me the 9-colored illusory stone, and I'll remember you. Consider it a friendship. Xie Wuyu said with an arrogant expression. It was as if the fact that Lin Feng could make Xie Wuyu remember him was because Lin Feng had cultivated in his previous life. Lin Feng was speechless at Xie Wuyu's arrogance. He had seen too many people like that. They thought that they were from a good family and did everything as if it was only natural. They looked down on others. Lin Feng was disgusted by Xie Wuyu. He said indifferently, If you don't have anything of value, let's end the deal here. When Xie Wuyu heard Lin Feng, his face darkened. He said, You don't want to be friends with me? Put away that arrogant face of yours. Who do you think you are? You want to use the excuse of being friends to steal my 9-colored illusory stone. Do you think I'm a fool? You think too highly of yourself. I guess your status in the 3-headed cobra clan isn't very high, right? You're acting all high and mighty outside. What a joke. Lin Feng pursed his lips. Boy, do you know that you've just infuriated me? Do you know the price of infuriating me? Xie Wuyu squinted his eyes, which were filled with coldness. There's no lack of self-righteous people in this world. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. Teach this reckless guy a lesson. Xie Wuyu's face darkened. He didn't hide his viciousness anymore. Yes, 2 bestial cultivators jumped out and threw punches at Lin Feng, one on his left and one on his right. Those people were looking at Lin Feng in a cold and detached way. In their opinion, Lin Feng had dared offend Xie Wuyu, so he definitely wouldn't have a happy ending. Chapter 1054. The 2 geniuses weren't weak. They were at the 6th sky of the Yin-Yang layer, but they couldn't compare to Lin Feng. Facing their attacks, Lin Feng looked indifferent and exhaled. His breath was like a sword. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 rays of sword chi flew out. Slash, slash. In an instant, the 2 geniuses' bodies were pierced through. They flew backwards and fell to the ground, screaming in agony. If we were outside, you'd be dead already. Today, I'm sparing your worthless lives because of King Zhanpeng. Lin Feng clasped his hands behind his back. He looked indifferent. Brother Xie, he's too cruel. The other young geniuses of the Beast clan were astonished. Lin Feng had attacked twice, and he had easily injured them. He had proved how strong he was. The demon race geniuses' expressions turned serious. Not all of them followed Xie Wuyu's lead. Immediately, 6 or 7 demon race geniuses stepped back to show their attitude. They didn't want to get involved in this battle. Maybe they were greedy for Lin Feng's 9-colored illusory stone, but they knew their limits. They knew when to advance and when to retreat. Xie Wuyu looked gloomy as he said, "Little boy, I underestimated you. Today, I'll personally capture you and avenge my injured brothers." As soon as he finished speaking, Xie Wuyu leaped out. 1,000 poisonous hands. Xie Wuyu stretched out his hands and clenched his fingers together. He looked like a cobra with its forked tongue, ready to strike. Countless hands appeared in the air. Those hands turned into poisonous snakes and spat out poisonous fog. Then they turned back into hands and attacked Lin Feng. That kind of magical ability was extremely strange. The 3-headed cobra's attacks are poisonous. That 1,000 poisonous hands is obviously poisonous as well. Once the poison invades your body, your spiritual energy will disperse. A demon prodigy who had retreated from the battle said solemnly. The other demon prodigies who had retreated with him nodded in agreement. That little brat won't be able to block Brother Xie's 1,000 poisonous hands. Wait until Brother Xie defeats that little brat. Let's see how we'll deal with him. Dealing with him is secondary. The most important thing is to get his treasures, said Lu Chang and the others in an evil way. Their goal was clear. They wanted to steal Lin Feng's treasures. That kind of thing was very common in the world of cultivators. Strength was everything. When people saw treasures, they would try to steal them without any scruples. That kind of thing happened all the time. "Little brat, it's time," said Xie Wuyu, smiling coldly. He was extremely confident in his 1,000 poisonous hands. His 1,000 poisonous hands was about to reach Lin Feng. Swoosh! Suddenly, Lin Feng disappeared without a trace. Where is he? Xie Wuyu's face. To the Lu Chang and the others exclaimed. Xie Wuyu was shocked and turned his head to look. Lin Feng raised his right foot and threw a kick at him. Bang! The kick landed on Xie Wuyu's buttocks. Xie Wuyu felt as if his buttocks had been split open. He fell to the ground, and his forehead hit the ground. Blood flowed out of his forehead. This is called buttocks falling down wild goose style. Said Lin Feng, "I'm going to kill you." Xie Wuyu had never been humiliated like that before. He looked like he was going insane. He stood up and threw himself at Lin Feng. But Lin Feng had already arrived beside Xie Wuyu. He raised his right foot and kicked Xie Wuyu hard. Xie Wuyu didn't even have the chance to fight back. Lin Feng's kick landed heavily on Xie Wuyu's body. The sound of bones breaking was heard. Xie Wuyu didn't know how many bones had been broken by Lin Feng's kick. Wah! Xie Wuyu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. Lin Feng stepped on Xie Wuyu's face and said disdainfully, "A piece of trash like you dares to cause trouble for me? I really don't know who gave you the guts. Isn't he a little too strong?" The geniuses who had retreated swallowed their saliva. They were glad that they had made the right decision. They hadn't expected Lin Feng to be so strong. In this world where the strong were respected, Xie Wuyu had dared to provoke Lin Feng. Even if he was killed, he could only admit that he was unlucky. Lu Chang and the others were so scared that their faces turned pale. Lu Chang slapped his own face and looked at Lin Feng pleadingly. "I didn't recognize Mount Tai just now. I'm sorry for offending you. Brother, please be magnanimous and forgive me." The others also slapped their own faces and begged Lin Feng to let them go. Now that they knew that Lin Feng wasn't someone to be trifled with, how could they still dare to fight with Lin Feng? Apologizing like this was embarrassing, but it was better than being beaten half to death, right? Some of the geniuses don't fear death to protect others. They're even willing to sacrifice their own lives. But there are also shameless people like you. Take this guy and get lost. Don't let me see you again. Lin Feng kicked Xie Wuyu dozens of meters away. Let's go now." Lu Chang and the others quickly left with Xie Wuyu and the other injured geniuses. "We won't disturb this brother's cultivation any longer." The other demon race prodigies didn't know Lin Feng's temperament and didn't know if they would upset Lin Feng by staying here to cultivate. They cupped their fists and chose to leave as well. Soon, Lin Feng was the only one left in the sacred ancestors' Tao enlightenment ground. It seems that the devil race is the same as the human race. Lin Feng shook his head slightly. The demons he had met in the past were all unyielding and would rather die than submit. This gave Lin Feng the illusion that the Yao clan were all like this. It was only now that he realized how wrong his previous understanding of the situation was. Lin Feng didn't care about Xie Wuyu and the others. They were just a bunch of small fries. He continued sitting cross-legged, holding the 9-colored stone. The 9-colored godly light enveloped Lin Feng. Under the influence of the 9-colored godly light, Lin Feng quickly entered a mysterious state of enlightenment. Suddenly, Lin Feng had an epiphany. He had the feeling that he had arrived in a mysterious world. In that world, there was a great rock. The great rock flapped its wings and flew up into the sky. It could travel freely through space. Lin Feng also flapped his golden wings and followed the great rock. He didn't know how long they flew, but Lin Feng felt like he had become a great rock. He could travel freely through space. When Lin Feng opened his eyes, Lin Feng was pleasantly surprised. He stood up and took a step forwards. Surprisingly, he disappeared. A moment later, Lin Feng appeared a few dozen meters away in the air.